reducing time and costs. Another 19 medical conditions are currently being considered for inclusion as part of the expansion of pharmacy services, further improving the availability of safe, affordable health care for Territorians. Mr Chair, we are investing in our people. Delivering the best of care is only made possible by having the best people, and NT Health is constantly working to attract, retain, develop, support, nurture and invest in our people. The nursing and midwifery plan increased student nursing placements by over 30%, introducing new fast-track pathways to transition students into graduate nursing programs and enhancing graduate program to improve career pathways and future opportunities. We grew our medical workforce through our investment in the Flinders NT Medical Program with 9 additional places, and continues to support the establishment of the 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙏 University Medical School that will commence in 2026. Our intern medical program and rural generalist program are providing career pathways and specialist training for our highly skilled medical staff. NT Health also appointed the Territory's first ever Chief Paramedic Officer. The Territory is only the second jurisdiction in Australia to do this. By expanding the scope of practice for paramedicine across a range of health services, including aged care and remote health settings, NT Health aims to improve patient outcomes and experiences. Increasing and enhancing Aboriginal employment, as well as recognising and respecting the centrality of culture to health, is necessary to enhance service access, equity and effectiveness. Other highlights include 24 people enrolled in the NT Health Aboriginal Cadetship Program, which assists eligible Aboriginal NT University students to gain health qualifications and frontline employment. A new Aboriginal enrolled nurse program model is being developed by NT Aboriginal school leavers, being developed for NT Aboriginal school leavers keen on a career in nursing. This will be available from July 2025. 5 Aboriginal staff members are participating in the Aboriginal Leadership and Development Program. On Groote Island, a new program to provide the Aboriginal health workforce with greater training opportunities was introduced. This pilot program enables Aboriginal people working in healthcare to train locally on country for the first time, so that trainees don't need to travel to the mainland to continue their studies. Mr Chair, 8 trainees, including school leavers and existing NT Health employees, recently commenced the first phase of this new program, and I was fortunate to be able to attend their orientation and induction session. In closing, I would like to highlight that health services are vital for everyone at some point in their lives, and we are committed to providing a whole-of-society approach to healthcare that prevents illness and promotes and delivers high-quality health care for Territorians. As Minister for Health, I wish to extend a sincere and heartfelt thank you to all of the hard-working and dedicated NT Health staff. Your efforts, often at the front line of service delivery, play a vital role in keeping the Territory safe and providing great health care for all Territorians. Thank you, Mr Chair, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Minister. Are there any questions relating to the statement? Shadow Minister.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister, for the opening statement. Minister, the Chief Minister has just got off radio and publicly admitted that OC spray will fall into the wrong hands and some Territorians will just have sore eyes. Can you confirm whether your department has done any modelling on how many hospital presentations this reckless attitude will cause, or do you plan to just let emergency departments deal with the fallout?
Thank you for the question. Look, I'm not aware, I haven't had a chance to listen to the statement, but when it comes to OC spray, that's a recent announcement by the CLP government. The policy, the changes, any discussion around legislation. Look, nothing is in place at the moment, and I thank the Chief Minister for making that announcement. It's a real opportunity to support people in the community that may want to protect themselves at some point. We haven't done any modelling at this point, and as the policy progresses, I'm sure there'll be some discussions about that. But at this point, it's too early to focus on those issues. It's a policy announcement, and I look forward to that being delivered.
So there was no consideration to kind of model what hospital presentations may look like before the policy was even announced, is what you're saying? Like you haven't had any of those conversations with.
As I said, this is another strong policy announcement by the CLP government when it comes to delivering on our election commitment, particularly around reducing crime, rebuilding the economy, and restoring our lifestyle.
Through the chair, I don't remember any policy commitment in regards to OC spray. So where was that? I don't remember that announcement.
The Chief Minister just made it. I think you might. She probably made it again on radio.
Was that before the election or after the election?
Gentlemen.
You're the one that told me.
Gentlemen.
You said it was an election commitment.
Okay.
I'm just trying to figure out.
Member for Daly, Minister. Thank you. We won't be cutting each other off. Member for Daly can ask his question. The Minister will then respond. I believe the Minister had the floor. So, Minister, over to you.
So, as I said, our election commitment was to reduce crime, rebuild the economy, and restore a territory lifestyle. Recently, the Chief Minister has made a policy announcement regarding OC spray. As you said, a member for Daly, you've heard that on radio this morning. I haven't heard that on radio this morning. There has been previous announcements. In fact, the Chief Minister was in Katherine last week to make that announcement. When it comes to modelling of potential presentations into the health system, any of that work will be considered at a future point, but it certainly hasn't been considered at this point.
Okay, considering that the Chief Minister did say on radio this morning that if it does get into the wrong hands, some Territorians, so innocent Territorians, might just have sore eyes. Has there been any advice from NT Health in regards to the use of this spray around respiratory distress, eye injuries or chemical burns of the OC spray misuse? Or were you excluded from those conversations entirely when Cabinet decided that innocent Territorians having sore eyes is an acceptable side effect of a CLP policy?
Look, as I've said, the policy announcement was made last week by the Chief Minister, and we welcome that announcement because, particularly over the last 8 years, what we've seen is some extraordinary increases in crime right across the board under the failed Labor government. We've seen extraordinary increases across not only property crime but violence against people. We've seen significant increases in
still going up,
domestic and family and sexual violence. And that announcement, as I said, it's a policy announcement, and any future consideration of any impact of OC spray will be considered at the appropriate time.
Thank you. So were you a part of any discussions around that policy announcement? Because you said the Chief Minister just announced it last week, but I would have assumed that, it would have been a Cabinet decision and you would have been a part of those decisions, or did the Chief Minister just leave you out of that decision?
Look, all issues are discussed in Cabinet. I know you haven't been at Cabinet yet, but those decisions are made by Cabinet. The member for 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙑𝘎 may be able to inform you what goes on in Cabinet.
Sounds like this was the Chief Minister's call and shut you out.
But all of these things are discussed in Cabinet, and
Just cut the real leader out.
As I said, at this point, I'm not here to go into what was and what wasn't discussed in Cabinet, but what I can assure you is that this is a government announcement. It's supported by all of our members. That decision was that announcement was made last week. The future of looking at what impact that OC spray will or won't have, there's no evidence before me at the moment saying what impact it will or won't have. Those things will be considered at the appropriate time.
Okay, so thank you, Chair.
I'll just come in just on a couple of things. Minister, we won't reflect on who and who hasn't been in what positions. Member for 𝙍𝙬𝙬𝙀, please, no more interjections. Let's just bring it back to questions and answers.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So you haven't been part of any of the decision-making around OC spray? Is that what you're saying, or you have been?
I think I've answered that question.
So, Minister, you haven't thought that, the significant health impact that this may create, and especially if it gets into the wrong hands and innocent Territorians are sprayed with this OC spray, you haven't thought to look at any modelling and how the impact that may have on the emergency department or the hospitals?
As I said before, we'll look at that at the appropriate time. This OC spray...
Thank you. Through the Chair, when is the appropriate time, Minister?
So, as I was trying to finish my answer, at the moment there's no OC spray on any shelf in the Northern Territory. We've got opportunities to look at any impact, if any, that OC spray will have, and I'll deal with that at the appropriate time.
Thank you. So when is the appropriate time? Is it before OC spray will be available? Is it after? Is it like when is the appropriate time for you to look at that? Because I would have thought the appropriate time would be before you make the policy announcement.
Well, look, I think I've said it a couple of times. The policy announcement was made by the Chief Minister in Katherine last week, and we'll have ongoing discussions about that policy and the impacts, if any, that that may have. So thank you.
Thank you. Through the Chair, given the Chief Minister has essentially greenlit misuse of chemical weapon in public, will you direct your department to prepare a public health response strategy, or are you comfortable waiting until the first innocent Territorian gets sprayed in the face before taking action?
As I said before, we'll be dealing with any issues around that, any planning. We have the best trained NT health staff here in the Northern Territory. We have nurses on the front line. We have the very best doctors on the front line. We have St John paramedics on the front line. We've got the very best people. If there are any impacts, they'll respond accordingly.
Okay, and I suppose that's the issue, like no one's doubting the hard work from our health sector, from nurses to doctors, from St John's Ambulance, but this policy announcement will have a direct impact on their ability to run their hospitals, to clinics, to be able to respond to emergencies. So I'm just trying to figure out how you haven't decided to model the impact this may have on our emergency services. So you haven't taken into consideration the impact this will have on our health workers.
Just before you answer, Minister, I will allow this question. We're just starting to flirt with argumentative under Section 109. I will allow this, Minister.
Well, firstly, the member for Daly has, I think in his question, indicated that we'll have, I think he might have used the word significant impact on our frontline staff. I think that's just an assumption by the member for Daly. There's no evidence to support that at all, that there'll be a significant impact on our frontline staff. That's an assumption being made by the member for Daly. As I've made very clear, if there are impacts on the health of anybody, we have the very best nurses, doctors on the front line, and we have paramedics that are out in the community every day of the week, working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If there are, and I say if there are any impacts, we have the people in place to be able to deal with those issues. I don't accept your assumptions that it's going to have a significant impact on frontline staff. We'll deal with those issues if and when they happen. So.
Thank you. Through the Chair. So do you have any evidence that it wouldn't impact our health services, or have you sought debriefing from experts in this field?
As I said, and it's I'll keep answering that, but we'll deal with these issues if and when they happen. Prior to any policy announcement, yes, of course there are considerations made. I've seen comments in the media from medical staff. There's a whole range
Through the
of
Chair, but you haven't sought debriefing from any experts?
There's a whole...
The question was around... He's not answering the question.
Member for Daly. Yeah, if you're unhappy with something, just come to me and tell me what it is.
I said through the Chair.
Yeah, but say, Mr Chair, I've got this issue, and then I'll mediate.
The question was, has he sought any has he consulted with any medical experts?
Thank you,
in
Member
this
for
field,
Daly.
considering?
I will put it to the Minister. I will also ask if we've been on this line of questioning for 12 minutes, but Minister, over to you.
Just testing him for when he's the Chief Minister, that's all.
So, can you repeat the question?
Yes, Chief Minister, we will.
Member for 𝙍𝙬𝙑𝙬𝙎, I did rule that we won't reflect on
I was promoting him.
any positions. Minister.
Oh, sorry. I'll take that back and I'll save that for Chief Minister Kerle.
Sorry, Mr Chair. I think my question was, could the member for Daly repeat the question? There was a few interruptions there and I can't recall exactly what he said.
Member for Daly.
Thank you, through the chair. The question was, have you sought debriefing from medical experts on the impact that OC spray may have on our hospital departments?
Not at this point. As I said, the Chief Minister travelled to Catherine last week to make the announcement. So that announcement is now steps underway to implement that particular policy, and I'll seek and receive any briefings at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Member for Karama.
Thank you. Just follow-up question. Minister, just in regards to the announcement, can you just confirm that it's an announcement about a trial and it's also about something, an action that has been undertaken within another jurisdiction, Western Australia, for many years?
Yes.
Point of order,
thank you, member for
Chair.
Karama.
Minister.
Sorry.
Sorry, this is not relevant to the Minister's portfolio. I'm talking about the health implications and the impact this may have OC spray, not the actual policy announcement. So I don't know where this sits within the health portfolio for the Minister. So he would have to rephrase his question.
It was directly about OC spray, which you've been talking about through the chair.
If it's in line with health,
It's not in line with health.
if it's member for Karama, can you clarify? Is your question in line with health?
Look, I think it's picking up on the health aspects, but it's just asking confirmation that is this a trial, and also has this OC spray happened within another jurisdiction, Western Australia, which may inform the Minister at some stage about health aspects.
Okay. I will allow this question. Okay, committee. We are already getting, we've had questions going for under 15 minutes and it's starting to get disorderly. The member for Karama, I will allow the question and then we will go straight back to the Shadow Minister. Minister.
Thank you, Mr Chair. And what I would say is that yes, it is a trial, and yes, it is already happening in Western Australia. And I think it's important to make the point that OC spray has been used by the police for quite significant periods of time now. As I've previously said to the member for Daly, at the appropriate time I will seek information from my health department as to any possible impact should somebody come into contact with OC spray. But at this point the member for Daly is, I think, making some assumptions about the impact of OC spray, and I'll look at that at the appropriate time.
Thank you. I don't think I'm making any assumptions. I'm just ensuring that you understand the implications that this policy decision may have. But I will pick up, and I think it's a good point from the member for Karama, that in Western Australia, this has been in use for some time now. So have you spoken to your counterparts in Western Australia on the impacts this may have on our hospitals and our emergency departments in Western Australia, considering it seems to be you're following along with Western Australia? I would have thought you'd spoken to them about this.
Let me just remind the committee the announcement was made last week. I've been here preparing for estimates. I've been preparing for questions about the actual budget. And
That's good. At least you weren't fishing.
And I'd like to hear some questions about the budget, but As I've said before, when it comes to briefing, seeking information, I'll do that at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Shadow
Thank
Minister,
you.
and I will ask
Yep,
if we can
we're moving
move
on. All good.
Cool.
Thank you. Minister, can you confirm that no changes to the identification, notification and activation system of a code yellow have been made in the reporting period?
Yes, from my perspective, when it comes to code yellows, what I've been particularly impressed with is that the CEO of our department, and I'll ask him to speak about what goes on with code yellows, because I've been particularly impressed with the feedback that I've got from the CEO around the work that's being done on the front line in the emergency area here in Darwin. And as I constantly say, that the staff that we have on the front line working for NT Health are the very best staff, and being visiting hospitals, speaking to staff, their commitment, their dedication, the work that they do 24 hours a day, 7 days a week is absolutely incredible. And I'll ask the Chief Executive just to give a rundown on what's being done differently at the Royal Darwin Hospital, because I can assure you what's being done at the Royal Darwin Hospital is making a significant difference to reducing the number of code yellows. And I must say that, look, under Labor, I think there was 16 or 18 code yellows just in the last few years, which indicates to me that the former Labor government just really didn't have control of these issues. There's certainly pressure situations working on the front line, but I'll ask the CEO just to give the Estimates Committee an overview of what's been happening on the front line, the work that's being done to make sure that we have the resources available to prevent code yellows from happening. And this doesn't detract from there's been significant pressure points at the Royal Darwin Hospital. And I'll ask our Chief Executive to enlarge on that a bit for you.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Member for Daly. For the Hansard, Chris Hosking, Chief Executive of NT Health. Code yellow is a technical term that basically is used to describe when we are in bed pressure distress within the hospital. Generally, this happens when we get high numbers of presentations coming through the emergency department. For a whole range of very good clinical reasons, the length of stay in emergency is really important. Getting people who need to be in hospital out of the ED and into a ward is a time-critical function. Where we've experienced code yellows in the past generally relates to when we have bed block in our wards and we can't get people out of the ED and into a ward, into a bed where they can be looked after. In that really immediate emergent care setting, ED is the place to be. But if you need to stay in hospital for any length of time, getting into a bed on a ward where a clinical care team can look after you is absolutely important. And I think where we were not perhaps performing as well as we might have in the past was getting people out of ED and onto the wards. It was that bed block that was slowing that process down. People were spending too long in ED and it was causing pressures. And code yellow is really just the internal term we use to describe a situation of extreme bed distress. Now
Thank you. Through the chair, can I just ask, in the last reporting period, how many bed blocks, as you describe it as a measurement to call the code yellow, how many has there been since August last year? Because I note the Minister in his opening statement, all of a sudden in August 2024, there was no code yellows, which I find very hard to believe. So I'm just trying to find out how many bed blocks have there been since August 2024?
Thank you, Member for Daly. Bed pressures in the hospital ebb and flow, as you would imagine, based on presentations.
But you would have that data, wouldn't you? Just how many bed blocks? Like I would assume you would be ready for these questions.
Member for Daly, we'll allow Mr. Hosking to finish his answer, and then please raise either a follow-up or an objection if you feel your question's not being answered, and then I'll address it. Mr. Hosking.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We experience bed pressures all the time. By way of example, in the last week or two, we've had bed pressures at Royal Darwin, very much at 100% capacity. What is fundamentally different and why we're not having to call code yellows on those is that our processes to get people out of ED and into wards are working much more smoothly. And the way we do that is by coordinated care across all of our divisions. We have daily and sometimes 2 and 3 times daily checkpoints where we bring our senior clinicians and hospital administrators together, and we look at a whole of health system approach to managing bed pressures, and that can include using capacity in other regional hospitals where we can move patients around. It includes having a look at our patients who are being triaged in terms of risk and when they can be discharged. It's fair to say we experience bed pressures all the time, and it varies depending on the number of presentations to the hospital. What we have not had since August last year is a situation where we could not manage it. We have continued to manage those situations of extreme bed pressure and move people through the system and get them into hospital beds where they can be cared for. Calling code yellow is a sign that things are not working. We haven't had to call a code yellow because we haven't been in a crisis. We've had extreme operating pressures, but we've been able to manage those very effectively, and that's an absolute credit to the clinicians and the administrators at Royal Darwin Hospital. And those daily, we call them a huddle meeting, where we come together, short, sharp, 15 minutes, to look at how we can relieve pressures. I personally attend those on a regular basis to support our staff and get a read on the pressures that the hospital's experiencing. And I can't say how impressed I am with the staff at Royal Darwin Hospital. I need to be really clear that the pressure on the hospital system hasn't gone away, but the way we're managing it is more streamlined, more sophisticated, and is meaning that those patients are getting the care they need in the time they need it.
Okay, thank you. I think I've heard enough. Can I ask a similar question through the chair?
Member for Daly, I will, but that's not how we're gonna. That's not how we're going to end questions. You can just tell me you've had your answers. You're satisfied, Mr. Hosking. If you could,
can you
bring this to a close in the next 30 seconds, and then it'll be the member for Daly.
I'm happy to rest there.
Okay.
Thank you,
Member
Mr.
for
Chair.
Thank you. Minister, can you confirm there has been no bed blocks since August 2024? Yes or no? Has there been no bed blocks?
Thank you, Member for Daly. I think, as the CEO said, bed block and bed pressures, whilst there are bed pressures every day of the week, if you're still focused on code yellow, yes, we do have bed pressures every day of the week. The CEO made that very clear, that the same pressures exist at the Royal Darwin Hospital that have existed there for quite some time now. What we have seen is that Mr. Chair, the day-to-day coordination, the prioritisation and the collaboration across the clinical streams has improved considerably. That's where we've seen the major changes at the Royal Darwin Hospital, and that's what relieves pressure on the emergency department. And I can only commend the CEO and the staff that have taken a more proactive approach to dealing with bed pressures at the Royal Darwin Hospital every day of the week.
The question was, though, has there not been any bed blocks since August 2024? I appreciate the answer you've given, but I just want a yes or no answer. Have there been any bed block? Have there not been any bed blocks?
Look, I'll ask the CEO to expand on that.
It doesn't need expanding. It's just a yes or no answer. You should have the data when there's a bed
It's not a
block.
yes or no answer.
Of course it is.
It's not a yes or no answer. And as I said, this is an operational issue that you're raising. And I'm asking the CEO to answer your question for you, if you could be a little bit patient with that.
Thank you. So can I just get the CEO to answer if there have been no bed blocks since August 2024, yes or no? I appreciate the Minister for allowing him to answer that.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Member for Daly. The term bed block is a colloquial term. It's not a defined set of conditions that are either achieved or not. We have bed pressures every day. Some days are better than others.
Through the Chair, just to clarify, you did state earlier, though, that when there are bed blocks, that's a measure to call a code yellow. So I'm just trying to understand how many bed blocks there haven't been any bed blocks, because there haven't been any code yellows, as the Minister stated in his opening statement. So that suggests there hasn't been any bed blocks. Is that true? Yes or no?
I didn't say that, Member for Daly. I need to be really
You did.
precise about this.
Okay. Sorry, Mr. Hosking, Member for Daly. Thank you. I think, Member for Daly, the question is clear. We'll now go into an uninterrupted response from the Minister or his team. Minister.
Thank you, and I'll ask the Chief Executive to explain to the Member for Daly the issue around bed block. The Member for Daly, I think, indicated that this is some indicator of a code yellow. Look, there's many indicators for code yellows. I'll ask the CEO to explain what the term bed block means.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Member for Daly, for the question. I certainly did use the term bed block in my previous answer. I was using it in the colloquial sense that it is used within hospital administration. It's another way for describing that we have bed pressures of a critical nature, which, as I've said, is a regular occurrence in the hospital. Bed block is not a predetermined set of conditions that is either achieved or not in a binary sense, and as such, it's not a trigger for a code yellow to be called. A code yellow would be called when we're simply not coping with the bed pressures, and we have not had an instance since August last year where we've not been able to cope with or manage those bed pressures. So as the Minister for Health has stated, the pressures on Royal Darwin are no different to what they were last year or the year before. What has changed is the way we manage that on a day-to-day basis, and that, as I've stated previously, is a credit to our clinicians and staff who do a damn fine job every day. I think that's probably the plainest answer I can give to that.
Member for Johnston on a follow-up question.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Mr. Hosking, and all our health people for doing such a wonderful job. Just to clarify and to get away from some of the terminology, can you tell us how many days RDH has been above capacity in the reporting period?
I'll have to refer that to the CEO. I'm not sure if we have that data, but I'll ask the CEO to provide some detail around that.
Thank you, Member for Johnston. Certainly we do keep that data. I don't have it at my fingertips, but we could take that on notice and table that either later in this morning's session or after the hearing today.
Thank you.
Member for Johnston, please restate the question for the record.
How many days has Royal Darwin Hospital been above capacity in the reporting period?
Minister, do you accept the question?
Yes, I accept the question.
Question asked by the Member for Johnston of the Minister has been allocated the number 7.1. Member for Johnston.
And how often is the emergency department double bunked in the reporting period?
I'm not sure if we have that. I'll ask the CEO to give detail around that.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Member for Johnston. Double bunking in the emergency department does happen on a regular basis as a matter of necessity. Obviously, the doors are always open and we will always treat patients as they present. It fluctuates during the day. Some days we're under quite extreme pressures, and today things are pretty steady at Royal Darwin, so today's a good day. I don't have a specific set of data I could table with the committee this morning because that data is, fluid and changes throughout the day and from day to day. I think the best answer I can give the committee is it is an ongoing operating pressure at Royal Darwin. It happens with regularity. When it does, we manage it the best we can, and using some of the processes I spoke to earlier, we try and get people out of ED beds and into wards where they can be cared for on a longer term basis, and that helps significantly at reducing that double bunking. But it is a necessary thing to make sure people get the care they need. So it's hard to put a single set of numbers on it, but I do acknowledge that it's an operating pressure we live with every day.
Thank you, and yes, understand. Would it be right to say we're the only jurisdiction in Australia that routinely uses double bunking in emergency?
Thank you, Member for Johnson. I'm not sure I could make that call with certainty. Emergency medicine presentations right around Australia are under extreme pressure. It's one of the things we regularly speak about within the Interjurisdictional Health Chief Executives Forum. I attended the Interjurisdictional Forum last Friday. Emergency pressures are one of those things that are driving strain on the healthcare system more broadly. It's also one of those areas that we're advocating very hard with our Commonwealth colleagues to try and address some of the systemic funding problems where we think we don't get a fair shake from the Commonwealth. But I would be very surprised if Royal Darwin Hospital was the only hospital where that practice was undertaken. When people present at ED, they need to get the care they need, and if that means putting a couple of beds closer together so we can provide the care, then that's exactly what we'll do.
Thank you. One more follow-up question. I think you mentioned as one of the ways that you've managed to manage things better is through the use of care coordinators. And I just wondered whether you could comment to the Minister how many care coordinators there are in remote settings.
Thank you, Member for Johnson. I just needed to confer with my colleague. We don't use care coordinators per se. We use patient flow teams that manage the flow of patients across the wards. And they've become an integral part of that response I spoke about earlier in terms of having real-time joined-up movement of patients across the health system, not just looking at Royal Darwin Hospital as one unit, but leveraging the other parts of the health system. So we do have a tactical and coordinated approach to patient flow, but we don't attach care coordinators to specific patients. That's not a specific model that we have in place.
So, for example, not talking about specific patients, but I mean, I'm aware that often people are flying across the territory multiple times for schedules, for appointments that are sometimes scheduled on different days, when one would hope that there could be a care coordinator ensuring that that wasn't happening. I believe the cost to the territory would be huge. I guess the question, we can come to it later, but while we're talking about it now, is there anything in this budget, Minister, to help establish a stronger workforce of care coordinators?
Thank you, Member Johnson. I'll ask the CE to provide a bit more detail around that for you.
Thank you, Member for Johnson, for the question. Absolutely, the point you make about as we move patients around to get them access to care, doing that efficiently so they're not coming in for something one week and an outpatient appointment the next week. One of the things we've been doing over the last few months is to do a review of our operating model for what we call patient logistics, and that's just a fancy term for how we move patients around, whether that be in aeromedical retrievals, patient-assisted travel or ambulance services. And we've developed a new operating model that will inform some of our renewal of our service contracts there. And we're looking to, we're using the term at the moment, command centre. I don't really like the term, but it's a centralised capability to look at how we move patients around and make the most efficient use of not just their contact with the health system, but also the cost of the patient travel and the movements. And we'll be embedding those in our new service arrangements with our partners who help us do that. So, look, I do acknowledge that we've probably had instances in the past where we've not been as efficient as we might have in that space, but we've had a really thorough and comprehensive look at the way we do that, and we're moving to reshape the way we actually undertake that work over the next 6 to 9 months. And it's, as I said, performing an essential adjunct to how we remove those, renew those service provider contracts. Now, we do the best we can within the current model, but I think some of our historical structures probably haven't been as facilitative of those smooth and efficient moves, but we're hoping to have a much better operating model probably by early next year.
Thank you. I'm happy to hand back to the Shadow.
Shadow Minister.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, who makes the decisions to call code yellows?
They're decisions for the Chief Executive Officer of Department of Health.
So what would be the process, I suppose, given that I'm assuming the head of, let's say Darwin Hospital, for example, what would the process internally be at Darwin Hospital for that decision to come up the chain to you?
Thank you. That's an operational question, and I'll ask the CEO to explain that for you. Thanks.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Member for Daly, for the question. Generally, those pressures intensify over a period of time, hours or days, depending on the level of strain that the hospital's under. The General Manager at Royal Darwin Hospital will be chairing the daily or 2 or 3 times daily huddle process to look at our patient flows. If it reaches the point where we simply can't move patients through the clinical workflows and get them into hospital beds and we need to call a code yellow, I'll be contacted directly about that. That won't be new information to me because I will have been attending the huddles and getting briefings along the way as that escalation happens. And then I'll make a decision based on the advice I receive through the top-end health service regional director and the RDH general manager as to whether those conditions warrant calling a code yellow, in which case I'll make that decision and then I'll inform the minister of that decision, obviously, but it's a decision made by me. And as I've said, I've not had to do that since August last year. I'll certainly say we've been close a couple of times when we've had really intense pressures, but we have not had a situation where we haven't been able to deal with it.
Thank you. So how many times has the General Manager of Darwin Hospital advised you that a code yellow should be called?
I have not had a code yellow recommended to me and then refused to call it. That has not happened a single time.
Okay, but you do have the ability to override the General Manager to call a code yellow, because from...
I'll just ask Member for Daly if you could put it, make sure it goes through.
Yeah, through the Minister. Yep. Through to the Minister. So just going back, the CEO of the department, Minister, has the ability to override the General Manager if that person advises the CEO that a code yellow should be called. Is that true?
Well, as I said before, when it comes to code yellows, these are operational decisions that are made by the CEO. I've got no doubt the CEO, talks to his staff, but I'll let the CEO explain how he goes about working with his staff, listening, and, as I always say, looking, listening, and learning. The 3 L's. I'm sure he looks at all of these issues, but I'll let the CEO explain how that works from an operational sense.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you again, Member for Daly. Generally, these things are managed by us talking about it and having a conversation. As I've said, these things escalate over a period of time, sometimes hours, sometimes days, and we'll be talking about it between myself and the other senior people. It would be quite unusual for the general manager of the hospital to advocate one position, and theoretically, yes, I could overrule that. It's not something that I would generally do. Generally, it's something that we will work through quite collaboratively, talk about how we can solve those challenges, and then make a decision about whether a code yellow call would be necessary or not. At the end of the day, it's the CE who's accountable for that, and I certainly don't flinch from that. But I've not had a situation where I've had to impose a decision on any of our senior hospital managers that has been inconsistent with their views or their advice. We've generally worked through it sensibly and cooperatively and come up with solutions to the problem, which ultimately is better for the patient. Getting the patient moving through those patient flows into a ward where their care team can provide the clinical care they need is absolutely what we need to be doing here. And I guess the calling code yellow, other than sending up a flare in the metaphorical sense, really doesn't achieve much. It's about getting care to the patient.
Thank you. I completely disagree with that statement that it creates a flare. I mean, a code yellow ultimately looks at the impact of the capacity that the hospital is at, and then that allows the government to respond. The public have an understanding of, I know there are some, you might have a small little cut. Some people do go to the hospital. That's the reality. You may rethink to go, actually, I can go visit a doctor or a GP around that. So I think it is in the public interest that a code yellow is called to ensure that that's being able to be managed by the government.
Is that a statement or a question?
On that, well, I'm still getting to my question, but Minister, when the former head of AMA is publicly saying staff have been told not to call code yellows and frontline workers are backing that up, are you seriously expecting Territorians to believe that no direction has been given to not call a code yellow?
Well, firstly, thank you for the question, and I do just want to address the statement that you made. Anyone would think that the way you're talking, you have more expertise in this field than our frontline workers. I just want to reassure you, you don't have the expertise. We've got the frontline workers here every day of the week, and that's why I've often referred you to the CEO, because these are the people that are at the front line 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And for you to be telling the Estimates Committee that you have greater expertise than the people on the front line...
Committee.
Sorry, this
Minister.
came, just to be clear, Chair, this came from the former head of AMA. So it's
getting to
not,
that
it's,
part.
I'm
Minister,
asking that
member
question
for Daly.
on his behalf.
Minister, member for Daly. Okay. First, I'll make a few rulings here. One, no statements. There was a question. Now, we will break. The time now is 10:05. We'll break for 10 minutes to 10:15. Adjourned.
Thank you.
We're re-adjourned. We are on questions of the opening statement. Shadow Minister.
Better turn my mic on, Chair, so we can all hear. So just going back to the former head of the AMA coming out publicly saying that staff had been directed not to call code yellows, and I will pick up that has also been backed by our front line workers. Minister, are you suggesting that the AMA is lying and those frontline workers?
Thank you, Member for Daly, for the question. And well, firstly, I just want to thank the former president of the AMA. I think he was in the position for over 10 years. So thanks to Rob for all the work that he did in that position. When it comes to code yellows, as I've said before, I'm certainly not on the coalface, but I certainly haven't been made aware of staff calling for code yellows on the front line. As I said previously, the issue around code yellows is an operational issue for the chief executive, and it's the chief executive that's on the front line making those decisions. And I'll ask the CEO again to explain again that you may have missed some of the previous statement that the chief executive made, because I think when you look at this closely, the chief executive has probably already answered this question, but I'll ask the CEO to respond to that. Thanks.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Member for Daly. As I understand the question, you're looking to confirm whether staff have been instructed that code yellows are not to be called. I'm understanding that correctly. I can state unequivocally I have never received any direction from the Minister to not call a code yellow, and I say that knowing that this hearing this morning is on the public record, and that's a statement of fact. Nor have I issued such an instruction within the Health Department to any of my staff. As I said, we have carefully considered whether a code yellow should be announced, and there have been a number of times where we've had intense bed pressures and we have been quite close to that, but we've always been able to manage that and establish patient flows and move patients to where they can get the care, and it has not been necessary to call a code yellow. Now, I'm not sure why the head of the AMA would make that statement. That's a question for the head of the AMA. But I will state unequivocally that there has been no ban on the calling of code yellow, and no such instruction has been issued within the Health Department.
Thank you for that response. So, Minister, I will take note that the CEO mentioned that there's been no directive given from you as the Health Minister not to call a code yellow. Has there been have you had any directions from any other ministers or the Chief Minister not to call a code yellow?
So are you asking me whether I've had other directions? What's the...
Well, you or the CEO. So has there been a directive come from the Chief Minister not to call code yellows?
Look, I'm the Minister for Health. I work very closely with the CEO every day of the week. So in my responsibility as the Minister for Health, I've had no direction from anybody. I've given no directions to the CEO. I've got full faith in not only the CEO, but every member of NT Health that's working on the front line has gone about their business differently. And I can't reiterate that enough, that when it comes to code yellows, nothing has changed when it comes to how busy the emergency area of the Royal Darwin Hospital has and still is. It's extremely busy. We don't shy away from that, neither do the staff. But what we have changed, and what the CEO has made very clear, is that he's working closely with clinicians. He's talked about huddles. You know, he's talked about being on the front line himself, working with the frontline staff and making decisions around whether a code yellow should be called. This is entirely an operational decision for the CEO working with his staff on the front line, and I've got full faith in what he's been doing there. So to come in here today and challenge and suggest that the CEO is being instructed somehow to not make these calls is absolutely appalling. We've got a CEO there to run the Health Department, and that's what he's doing.
Thank you, Shadow Minister. I'll now go to the member for Mulga. This is opening statement, so member for Mulga, you can ask any question you would like at this point.
Through the Chair, to the Minister for Health and the Department. My name is Yingiya Guyula, and I'm a member for the electorate of Mulka here. Minister, for constituents in my electorate have asked for better security at Gove Hospital. Could you advise if there is any funding in the budget, in this budget, to increase the hours for security at the Gove Hospital? And and could you advise when the current security contract expires? And I would also like to stress the need for local, culturally appropriate employment in this area. Current contract says security must respond within 20 minutes from where they are of a phone call from the hospital, but sometimes no response. No response. That's my first question there. Comment.
Thank you, Member for Mulka, and it's a very important question. And when it comes to the Gove Hospital, yes, we do have security in place at the Gove Hospital, and that's I think that's been there for a while now. But it's an important part of not only working to support staff, but to support visitors and patients that come to the Gove Hospital. My understanding is that on the ground, the security people are working closely with the residents in Gove. But what I'll do is I'll ask the CEO to speak and answer that more specifically around what hours the security people work and what a bit more detail around the contract for you, so that we can I suppose provide more information, and if there's any further questions on that. But I'll ask the CEO to explain how that contract is working at the Gove Hospital at the moment.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Member for Mulka. I don't have the expiry date for the current security contract here with me this morning, but we'll happily follow that up, and I would think we'd be able to answer that in session this morning. So through the chair, if we were to take a question there, we'll take that on notice and hopefully have the answer to that back before we conclude this morning. In terms of the security service at the Gove Hospital, we certainly take security for our staff and patients extremely seriously. The security presence at Gove is not a 24/7 model at the moment. It's 12 hours a day, and we have had issues raised looking to further strengthen those security arrangements, and we're currently considering a proposal to make that a 24-hour-a-day security arrangement. So that's working through a process at the moment, and would be established through that contract for security service being expanded to a 24/7 service. So it hasn't happened just yet. We're still on a 12-hour-a-day security service, but we're looking to expand that in the next little while.
Yeah.
I will just go through to make sure the member for Mulka gets this on notice. So we'll go through the procedure. Member for Mulka, please restate the question for the record.
Thank you. Minister, constituents in my electorate have asked for better security at Gove Hospital. Could you advise if there is any funding in this budget to increase the hours for security at Gove Hospital? And could you advise when the current security contract expires? And I would also like to stress the need for local, culturally appropriate employment in this area. The current contract says security must respond within 20 minutes of a phone call from the hospital, but sometimes no response.
Minister, do you accept the question?
Yes, we do.
The question asked by the member for Mulga of the Minister has been allocated the number 7.2. Member for Mulga, you can ask more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, through Chair, to the Minister. Minister, interpreters embedded in the hospital system is very important. Does this currently exist in Royal Darwin Hospital? I understand Menzies conducted a very successful trial some years ago. What has been done to implement this further?
Thank you, Member for Mulga, for that question. Interpreters are a very important part of the services that we deliver in all hospitals right around the Northern Territory. But I'll ask the CEO to expand on your question at the operational level. Thanks.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Member for Mulga. I absolutely agree. Interpreter services are absolutely critical to the functioning of Royal Darwin Hospital. Obviously, Aboriginal people make up a big portion of our patients in the hospital. Many come from different language groups. We rely heavily on our interpreters, both those on our staff and those within the Aboriginal Interpreter Service, who form part of the on-site interpreter resources that are there to support our patients. In fact, it's so critical, the daily huddles I spoke of in one of my earlier answers to questions, where we manage the patient flow across the various aspects of the hospital and look at where the operating pressures are. The availability of interpreters is dealt with as part of that daily huddle process, and we have the senior person from the Aboriginal interpreter team attend those huddles. People get an update on what languages are available for interpreter services on a daily basis, and that assists our clinicians greatly. So the answer is absolutely yes. It's something we take really seriously, and we dedicate both our own staffing and the use of the AIS interpreter service to meet that need. Thank you.
We've got one more. Minister, every estimate I ask questions about emergency patient retrievals for homelands. For years, our communities have been told that this is being reviewed. Every year that I ask, there is a new review happening, and at various times over 8 years, I have been told there will be an aircraft for this purpose. Currently, the Care Flight plane is a twin-engine plane that cannot land on many homelands landing strips, and is based in Darwin. We require an aircraft based in Gove for the homeland communities on Arnhem Land, and that can bring people to Gove Hospital as required. This aircraft could be a single engine, a plane such as the one the MAF, or Mission Aviation Fellowship, could have fitted a patient retrieval, a travel rather, with the pilot on standby, or it could be a helicopter which would also allow access to the Central Arnhem Highway, which last week sadly saw a car crash with 2 deaths on the road. What is happening to advise this issue? Because inaction threatens our communities, and we have seen deaths occur due to the lack of medical response. So I am keen to hear what real action is happening to support homeland residents and health workers. Minister.
Thank you, Member for Mulca, for that question. And this is an important issue around patient retrieval, and this is some of the work that we're doing in the department as we speak. There are a couple of things that I just want to the Estimates Committee to be aware of, and I did allude to this in my opening statement. Is that aeromedical retrieval services across the top end at the moment are costing us anywhere around the vicinity of $50 million a year. That comes from the health budget everywhere else in Australia. That's funded by the federal government. So we're actually trying to identify the funds to continue to deliver those services which CareFlight are doing at the moment. So this is one of the cost pressures that we face here in the Northern Territory because of the absence of the federal government throwing in that $50 million that we really do need to not only deliver those services but to enhance the services here in the top end. But in regard to your specific question, Member for Mulca, that's one of the particular issues that we are looking at the moment, and the work going on in the department is looking how best we can deliver those retrieval services here in the top end. And I'll ask the CEO to give a bit more detail around the work that we have been doing, not only to look at the service right across the top end, but also in the specific area that you've mentioned to us today.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Member for Mulca. Certainly, aeromedical retrieval services here in the Territory is an absolutely essential part of delivering healthcare. In fact, as an operating cost to delivering health, it's anomalously high here in the Territory. We have an aeromedical retrieval cost that outstrips other states and territories. The current arrangements that we have for aeromedical retrieval in the top end have been in place for almost 15 years, and they're coming to the conclusion of the existing contract. And we've done an extensive body of work over the last 6 months to look at the operating model for those services, and we will shortly be, in the second half of this year, be going back to market with a procurement tender for those services. And there are absolutely some challenges in places like the homelands out in the Mulca electorate and other parts of the Northern Territory where it's really hard to get an aircraft in. Certainly the shorter airstrips are problematic for the fixed-wing aircraft. Helicopters are an easier option to get in and out of some of those homelands. Unfortunately, they don't have the range of a fixed-wing aircraft, and that brings additional challenges, and they're also a more expensive asset to operate. So within that sort of operating budget, you get better value out of fixed-wing aircraft than you do out of rotaries. But what we'll be doing when we put those services back to market over the second half of the year, because there is a competitive market for these services, and there are proponents who are actively interested in pursuing that tender opportunity. And we've had those discussions with our incumbent provider, and we've notified that we'll be going back to a contested tender process for those services. We'll be specifying our requirements from close proximity to our urban centres to our most remote communities and homelands. There are challenges in terms of the reach to get into the most remote homelands and Sometimes road transport is a more viable option, and certainly in Central Australia, where we don't have the wet season and the conditions that come with it, road transport is usually sufficient. In the top end, it's a real challenge. We are further challenged, Member for Mulca, you make the point about the utility of single propeller planes and landing on a shorter airstrip. The fleet of aircraft that currently deliver those services are coming to the end of their operating life. They're now quite old, and a new contract for aeromedical retrieval services will need to contemplate new aeroplanes. So the successful bidder for that is going to have to deal with how they supply the actual assets for the contract. And there are established models in the aviation industry for how you do that. So the short answer to your question is yes, we absolutely understand the challenges out in the homelands. It is very difficult to land a twin-engined fixed-wing aircraft on those landing strips. And when we go back to market, we'll be going out with an approach that specifies what the government's requirements are for aeromedical retrieval, number of patients, where they live, how we need to get in and out, where the hospitals are that we need to transport them to. And we're going to be asking those suppliers, those experts in aeromedical retrieval, to put forward their best proposal to show us on a needs base how they're going to do that work and how they're going to be able to bring new aeroplanes to that contract, because those are an input cost to those suppliers to deliver that service. That will be a really thorough and comprehensive tender process. Proponents will have to pass through a phase 1 to pass the due diligence that they are a bona fide aeromedical retrieval service. They've got the right CASA accreditations and all those other things. And then we'll take a subset of those that qualify into a second round to choose a successful provider. And then we would transition to those new arrangements over the first half of next year. So I would be expecting that process to be able to provide better outcomes in places like the Lanapoi homelands, which I know has been a pressure point, but we need to go through that procurement process and let those providers bring their proposals to the table and evaluate them. So we are working on it. We've been doing a ton of work on it the last 6 months, and we will be taking tenders to market over the next few months. But I wouldn't expect to be in a position to announce any results until probably the end of this year or just after Christmas. But certainly we're focused on trying to get the maximum value on our spend in this area, the maximum penetration into those remote parts of the territory where we know we've got people that are dealing with chronic disease and they're not well, and it's a long, long way to get them to a hospital when they need tertiary care. And we know and understand that that's been a challenge, particularly in East Arnhem for a long time. And I'm very optimistic that we'll be able to do better with that under the new contract.
I will just, sorry, Member for Mulca, Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙑 has a follow-on question on that line of questioning.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister, and of course, senior executives there. Just following on from the member for Mulca's question about aerial retrievals. I just wanted to ask, now, Minister, absolutely, I cannot question your commitment to the bush. You've been out there more than many of your cabinet colleagues. But I just wanted to confirm, and I want to obviously, of course, acknowledge and thank you for getting out to 2 communities, particularly in my electorate, 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙑 and Yulimu, who don't currently have permanent medical clinics in operation. And I can acknowledge that there's work being done at the moment. I think the CEO and yourself spoke about it in the opening statement around potentially paramedics taking on a function there. Is there work being done when you talk about this tender, looking at those communities as well, air retrieval services, given that they don't have functioning clinics at this stage, acknowledging that there's work in progress?
Yeah, thank you, Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙑, for that question. I think in my opening statement, I spoke about the appointment of our chief paramedic, but
Yes.
We didn't actually speak about using paramedics in clinics. But I can take a further question from you about that. But certainly the importance of remote clinics, and you're right. Yes, I did visit Papunya and Haas Bluff. I think it was earlier this year or late last year, and just to see firsthand the challenges on the ground, and my electorate very similar to yours. I think mine might be a bit bigger, but we do share very similar. We do share very similar challenges when it comes to service delivery in the bush, and at the moment. No, we haven't discussed having paramedics delivering some of those services in remote clinics to answer that question. But did you have a follow-up around that?
I guess just following up from the member from Mauka's question around the tender that's going out for air retrieval, is that what we call it? Aeromedical services. Just there are a few remote communities, of course, that are either extremely remote, which you and I have in our divisions, but there are some that I acknowledge the Department of Health are working on clinics that are not operational 7 days or 5 days a week at the moment. Will they be considered as part of that tender, the need to have funding to look at those retrievals?
Yeah, so all of that work is happening, and given that it is a procurement process, I'll ask the CEO to talk about that a bit more, but that aeromedical retrieval, and I think you know this anyway, that Royal Flying Doctor does a lot of that work in Central Australia, and I think they operate right up until Elliot. And then the remainder is covered by the top end, but as part of that work, yes, certainly the conversations that I've had with the chief executive is that we want to, this is the opportunity to review the service delivery when it comes to aeromedical retrievals, and I want to ensure, just like the member for Mulca, that we have those services in place to be able to meet those challenges of the bush. But I'll ask the chief executive to explain where we're at with that process at the moment.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙑𝙍𝙎. Look, the short answer is no. Aeromedical retrieval south from Elliot is currently undertaken by the Royal Flying Doctor Service and therefore won't be part of that tender process I spoke about earlier. Ironically, the service in Central Australia that RFDS do is funded by the Commonwealth, and the top end is funded by the NT government, which is anomalous, and the Minister has spoken about that. Certainly, those clinics you mentioned where we don't have a full-time presence, we're always looking at how we can do better in those remote localities. And one of the areas we could potentially explore is how paramedicine professionals are used. We haven't started using them in the bush at this time, but the establishment of the chief paramedic role is a recognition that paramedicine has a broader role to play in clinical care, and it provides us with more options and opportunities.
Thank you.
It is a relatively new initiative.
Yes, thank you very much for that.
But I just wanted to say that, just going on from there, I do really appreciate the work that the Bush members are doing, and member for 𝙍𝙀𝙍, the member for Mulca, and of course the member for Daly, the member for Arafura and Arnhem, myself, the member for Namatjira. We all know that there's some big challenges out bush, and what I do want to reassure you is that we're constantly focused on continuous improvement, attracting staff. We even know the challenges of getting staff to some of these remote clinics at the moment, and what I've seen during my travels is an increase in agency staff, and I'm sure we'll talk about that a bit later, but I just want to reassure the Estimates Committee and of course the other Bush members that I know I listen to all of the things that you say as well, but we will continue to focus on getting the best health services delivered in remote areas.
Member for Mulca.
I've got a follow-up question
member
as
for
well.
Johnston.
So for a previous question from the member for Mulga in relation to interpreters, I believe you said there are embedded interpreters in the health system. Can you tell us how many and at what hospitals and what hours they work?
Thank you, Member for Johnson. We'll just see if we've got that actual information in front of us. If we haven't, we will certainly be able to get that. I'll ask the CEO to respond to that. Thank you, Member for Johnson.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Member for Johnson. At Royal Darwin, we have 7 full-time equivalents undertaking interpreter services. That's a combination of our own people and the AIS service. I don't have the specific breakup here, but I could certainly obtain that for you.
At any other hospitals?
I would have to double check that for you to give you a precise answer.
And are you able to provide to tell us what hours they work?
Yeah, I think to give you a precise answer, I think we'd probably best take that one on notice and give you something that's by hospital, by operating hour.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can certainly take that on notice, and we'll come back with the answers for you, Member for Johnson.
Member for Johnston, please restate the question for the record.
How many embedded interpreters are there across each hospital, and what hours do they work?
Minister, do you accept the question?
Yes, we do.
The question asked by the member for Johnston of the Minister has been allocated the number 7.3. Member for Johnston.
Thank you. I'm also interested in what I heard you say that you're also working with the Aboriginal Interpreter Service. I'm interested in what kind of strategy there is to ensure that that works well together, whether there's any work being done on developing that strategy, given, as you've both said, the crucial importance of access to interpreters.
Member for Johnson, that the interpreter service is essentially run by the Aboriginal Interpreter Service, which is part of the Department of Housing, Local Government and Community Development. So what I would say is that the Department of Health, the Department of Housing, Local Government and Community Development work very closely in partnership to ensure that not only are the interpreters employed, but they're trained, developed and able to provide interpretive and translation services to a variety of different languages. In regard to strategy, it's an ongoing partnership where we have interpreters on the ground doing what they do, and that's being that go-between to ensure that there's an understanding between health and that health understand what the patient's needs are.
Just follow up through the chair. Is there a formal arrangement in place between the Aboriginal Interpreter Service and the Department of Health in relation to using interpreters?
The interpreter service provides interpreters across many areas in government, including the Department of Health. So there's no specific agreement or MOU in place. This is a long-standing arrangement where interpreters are used, including the 000 call centre here in Darwin. So it's a long-standing agreement where interpreters are employed by AIS, which is part of the Department of Housing, Local Government and Community Development. So there's no specific agreement or written document. We provide interpreters on an as-need basis. When I say we, sorry, the Department of Housing, Local Government and Community Development provides those interpreters on an as-needs basis with those departments.
Okay, thank you. I might have some follow-up questions later, but I'm happy to leave that for now. Thank you.
Member for Mulga, back to you.
Thank you, through the Chair. Minister, what oversight and responsibility does the NT government have over health services provided in the homelands? How does the government know and ensure that residents in homelands are receiving appropriate health care, such as regular visits from primary health care providers?
Thank you, Member for Mulga. It's a very good question, and what we do know is that right across the Northern Territory we have a number of health clinics which are delivering health services on behalf of Northern Territory Health. We also have clinics that their services are being delivered by Aboriginal community-controlled health services. So in regard to the operational issues around having specialists and experts attending there to help with delivering of health services, I'll ask the Chief Executive to give a breakdown of some of those operational issues and how that works from a remote perspective.
Thank you, Minister. We touched on the challenges of servicing remote communities in our earlier question around aeromedical retrieval. To the extent possible, we try to provide care on country. Taking people off country to receive care is always less favourable than doing it on country. And we do that mostly in the bush by providing nursing services within the clinic and visiting services from medical practitioners and specialists. The degree of remoteness impacts on our ability to get out into those very remote places and provide that level of care. Hence, it's necessary to bring people to a clinic or to a hospital when they need something, a higher level of care. But we use a range of measures, from on-call doctors to provide advice 24/7 to nurses and Aboriginal health practitioners in the clinic. And often as a first point of treatment, that's how we best handle those, because we can get the care to the patient on their home country in the bush through a phone call, and someone who's medically qualified or part of a multidisciplinary team working with the nurse or the Aboriginal health practitioner on the ground in the bush to provide that care. Where people's clinical care requirements are more sophisticated or they have more challenging health conditions, and I'll use Maningrida as an example. Maningrida has extremely high rates of rheumatic heart disease. We've got a lot of people in that community who are unwell and need care from cardiologists and other medical specialists. And so we'll send multidisciplinary teams out to that community, and they might see 60 patients in a day, and that'll be a combination of cardiologists, it might be a renal nurse, it might be a whole team of people providing care for people who are suffering from a range of chronic diseases, and that's a face-to-face service with the clinician. And when someone's really sick and needs to have a greater level of access to medical specialists, we're often faced with having to bring them to the nearest regional centre, whether it be Gove, Katherine, Royal Darwin, to provide that level of clinical care. And that usually involves a family member or someone coming with them to accompany them when that happens. I think our first preference is to provide care on country using that telehealth and the digital tools we have available to us to inform the delivery of care on community. You know, that the next best option is when we send clinicians out into the bush to provide that care and treatment. And thirdly, when people are really sick and they need greater levels of access to tertiary care, bringing them to town. But we try as much as possible to keep people on country, and I think that area of leveraging digital delivery of expertise into the bush, particularly as we're seeing technology innovation now give us much greater coverage out in remote localities. Things like the connectivity we get from Starlink and the ability to get a a connection on a phone or a laptop device in very remote places gives us the ability to provide more care through virtual pathways. And I think long term we need to leverage that a lot more strongly, and to the extent we possibly can, not move patients around unless we absolutely have to. The cost of putting a patient on an aeroplane and moving them to a hospital is not insignificant, and people are always better cared for on country where their family and their friends and their community, that wraparound is in place to support them in their care. So I guess that's the triaging of our model. Where we're placing our emphasis is trying to get that care delivered on the ground in country. And as you know, people need to go to hospital, they absolutely need to go to hospital, but they shouldn't come there if they can be cared for at home. And some of the things we've been talking about earlier in terms of bed pressures in hospitals, that's another way of helping to ease that pressure, is that people in the bush can get the care on country. It's not always possible to have a doctor down the road in a clinic. That's not always a practical solution, but we can use technology to extend the doctor's expertise into the bush and then only have to move the patient physically when we absolutely have to. And I think particularly in the Territory where we've got a really dispersed population, you know, the challenge of distance is always going to be there. I think that exploiting technology is where we really need to focus our efforts over the next few years.
And just if I can add to that, Member for Mulga, just in your electorate alone, there are services being delivered by the MeWatch Health Service, certainly at 𝙍𝙬𝙑𝙬𝙍𝙬𝙍𝙬, Ganyangara. They're delivering services at Millingimbi, Ramingining, Yingiya. So those services are being delivered by the Aboriginal Controlled Health Service, but I want to reiterate that they do work closely with our NT Health, and particularly through the Gove Hospital. So that ongoing communication and ensuring that all people living in those particular areas are getting the health care that they need, that communication is constant. And as the Chief Executive said, the decisions around whether a particular patient needs to be transported to Darwin or to another hospital, all of those decisions are being made at the coalface, in combination between MeWatch, NT Health and our clinicians across the board.
Yeah, through Chair, especially in my electorate, it's the services are there in the communities, like the vehicles and nurses and doctors ready to go. But there's a problem with the road that we have during the wet season, and it's quite impossible to cross. But that's where we need airplane retrievals as well, or roadworks to be fixed up.
Exactly, and that's as I said before, all of us that work in the bush, we're really aware of these issues. But what I would say is that as the Chief Executive explained, we are looking at how best to manage patient retrieval and aeromedical services, and all of those issues are always taken into account. There will be times during wet season, of course, where roads might be impassable. There'll be other situations for other reasons where certain types of retrieval, such as by road, may be also problematic as well. But what I want to reassure you is that these are at the forefront of our decision making now, to ensure that we get the contracts clearly in place to ensure that we can deliver those services moving forward.
Okay.
Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙑.
Thank you. Just following on from the member for Mulga's questioning, could you give us a percentage of what population of the remote nursing cohort are agency nurses?
Thank you, Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙀𝙀, for that question. As I said, no doubt you've seen is that we're I've seen agency staff out there as well, but I'll ask the CEO to see whether we've got that breakdown at the moment. I'm sure we've got it somewhere. It might be, we may be able to answer it straight away, or we can certainly get the information, but I'll ask the CEO to respond to that.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙑𝙀𝙀. The short answer is it's too high, and I need to acknowledge that. I don't have a specific number here today. What we could do is give you a historical number for the reporting period, but I guess just to give it context, during the COVID pandemic, the use of agency staff escalated. It was a necessary step to keep workforce stability during the pandemic. And we've been working our way to wean ourselves off that and get to a more sensible balance. We've been quite effective in hospital-based nursing. We've been able to restore the staffing mix to a more sensible balance. In the bush, it is still disproportionate, and I don't have a precise answer, but I will say on the record it's the majority of staff in the bush, and there's always a place for sensible use of agency staff for backfilling, leave relief, those sorts of things. But we do need to shift that mix. What has occurred over the last few years is the way that work is packaged in agency-based employment is quite attractive. It's shorter stints and people come in for a period of time. It has less utility than FTE employees on the books, and as I said, we've made some really positive strides with hospital-based nursing. We need to do more in the bush, and that's certainly an effort of focus. We have recently established new panel contracts for nursing staff to try and get better price points and more efficiency. At one point, it was contributing to some of our spending pressures. But more importantly, having nurses employed on our books as NT Health employees makes them part of the organisation. They have more utility, they can supervise and exercise delegation, all those sorts of things. But we still have some work to do in that space. So in terms of getting you a precise answer, we'd have to do some work to get you a precise number. But the short answer is it's too high, and we're working hard to do something about it.
I think we have we got.
So through the chair, I'm happy to take it on. If you're happy to take it on notice, I'm happy to
take it on
notice.
notice.
Yeah, thank you.
Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙑𝙀, please restate the question for the record.
Thank you. Minister, could you please provide the data on the number of remote nurses that are Northern Territory government employed versus agency nursing staff? And that's it there, but I'm just wondering if the Minister would allow me to also ask what that is in the hospitals as well.
Yeah, look,
Minister,
we should be able to get that, and I'm happy to accept, happy to take that question on notice.
Thank you very much, Minister. And just to confirm, because I don't want to cause more work for our hardworking CEO. Would it be helpful if I gave you a particular moment in time, or is it easier for you to do a snapshot of the last financial period?
Point in time.
Yeah, a point in time. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I know we provided the answers to written questions. Yep. I'm not sure if it was in those.
I'm happy to do it as of the 31st of March, which is the closure of the reporting period.
I think 1st of July till 31 March. We can certainly take that on notice.
Thank you.
The question asked by the member for 𝙍𝙀𝙀 of the Minister has been allocated the number 7.4, and with that, the time now is 11:06. We'll break for 5 minutes, returning at 11:11. We've re-adjourned. Minister, please, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a answer to question number 7.2 from the member for Mulga. The answer to 7.2 is Northern Territory Health has allocated additional funding, $100,000 to security services at Gove District Hospital, with consideration being given to expanded services. The current security contract expires on the 31st of August 2025, and all requests for security attendance have been actioned by the contractor. There are no records or reports by the ordering officer or contract manager of security not presenting when called upon. At times, security is not called where it is determined a higher level of response or presence is required, such as the police. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I'll now go back to the floor for any questions on the opening statement.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, you knew in September 2024 that Healthscope would close its private maternity services, but you waited 8 months to write to your federal counterparts for help. What were you doing during that 8 months? Why did it take so long to write to them?
Well, thank you for the question, Member for Daly, and I think, as I've previously said, is that NT Health and my office was advised, I think in September last year, of the possibility, and I should say that there was no certainty given to us that they would be closing, but there was certainly flagged with us that Healthscope would be shutting down the maternity services. And I think the question that's often unanswered is, yes, we were advised after coming into government, but I think the unanswered question is, well, when did Labor know about this? And I think that's the thing that's often not discussed. And I think Labor has some questions to answer when it comes to Healthscope, which they've been silent on for right from the word go. But when it comes to Healthscope, Mr. Chair, what we have done and what we did do, and I'll get to the issue of writing to the Minister for Health, the Federal Minister for Health, I should say, in regard to that closure. So, as it transpired, we were, Healthscope presented a media release on the 20th of February advising that they were shutting down maternity services here in Darwin. So as a result of that media release on the 20th of February, and I'll make that clear, that's when Healthscope made their final decision to close down the maternity services here in Darwin. 20th of February, I think it'd be well worth the member for Daly going back and having a look at that media release that was presented by Healthscope, shutting down those particular services. So when it comes to writing to the Minister, what we do know is that at Royal Darwin Hospital, we, on average, just over 2,000 births per year at the Royal Darwin Hospital. What we were advised by Healthscope is that the number of births at the Royal Darwin Hospital had declined over the years from somewhere around, I think it was 700 to 900, down to around about 250 per year. What we said right from the outset was that given Healthscope's decision to close the maternity services here in Darwin, is that our Northern Territory Health, being the Royal Darwin Hospital, could cope with an extra 10% additional births at the Royal Darwin Hospital. So being able to cope with an additional 10, no more than 15% increase in the number of births at the Royal Darwin Hospital, what we did was we stepped in where Healthscope stepped out. We made a decision to look at what could be done in the absence of maternity services here in Darwin. So what we did do was, what we did do was develop two packages, two private maternity packages, one being a hotel package and one a return home sooner package with privately practising midwives. When we talk about, well, what date did you write to the Minister? The reason that we wrote to the Minister was in regard to the work being done within NT Health, to look at our current situation at the Royal Darwin Hospital to see what improvements could be done to the maternity ward here in Darwin, given that we're talking about a facility that is a number of years old. I think it's, at a guess, somewhere around 50 years old. So getting close to 50 years old. What we did do was write to the Minister for Health, being the Federal Minister, after scoping what would really be needed to improve the quality of the maternity service ward at the Royal Darwin Hospital. So what we did do was write to the Minister on the, I haven't got the date in front of me, but what we did do was write to the Minister asking for two options. One was $35 million, the other was $10 million to improve the facilities at the Royal Darwin Hospital. So the reason we wrote to him, as I said, was to look at how we could improve the facilities at the Royal Darwin Hospital. It's not about coping with additional births. We made that very clear from the outset that an increase in 10% birth rate through the Royal Darwin Hospital was manageable with the quality staff that we've got in the maternity area. And the issue really is about how can we improve the facilities over the longer term.
Thank you. Minister, do you accept that your delay of 8 months in seeking federal support wasted valuable time and likely delayed a long-term solution for territory mothers?
No, I don't.
So 8 months, you think that's acceptable? It took you 8 months to write to the federal minister.
Gentlemen, stop.
Let me be...
Minister. Member for Daly can finish his question, then the minister will respond. Member for Daly.
Thank you. I think the minister heard the back end of my question, but do you accept that this delay has potentially put at risk a long-term, or did put at risk a long-term solution for territory mothers? 8 months it took you to write to the federal minister.
Can I answer the question?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and perhaps the member for Daly didn't hear my first response, but I'll reiterate it for him because he's obviously missed some of the important points that I made. HealthScope, well, firstly, the unanswered question is, well, when did Labor know about HealthScope potentially closing down?
We weren't in government in September 2024.
Member for Daly.
You were in government in September 2024. So that's the real question.
Member for Daly, I'll put you on a warning.
So
Minister, please.
Thank you.
Okay. I ensured the minister wouldn't cut yourself off, Member for Daly. I will ensure you don't cut the minister off. Any more interjections, I'll put you on a warning, noting I really do not want you to have to leave this chamber being the shadow minister. It's essential that you are here. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And look, as I said before, some of the unanswered questions is, well, Labor was in government right up until August 2024, and I think the unanswered question is, well, when did they find out that HealthScope was intending to close the maternity services here in Darwin? This is something that the opposition doesn't want to talk about. I'm not sure why they don't want to talk about it, but they need to be very clear when they found out about HealthScope potentially closing their maternity ward. As I've said before, HealthScope decided to close the maternity ward and made a media release on the 20th of February 2025. Were we concerned? Of course we were. We were absolutely concerned about maternity services closing at the private hospital. We want to ensure that we have choices for all mothers and their families here in Darwin and across the Northern Territory. The Darwin Private Hospital is the only private hospital here in the Northern Territory. So to hear that maternity services were closing, it was absolutely a shock to us that final decision had been made. But importantly, we were in a position to step in where they stepped out. And that's why we went about identifying other packages that could be used by by families with private medical insurance. I've spoken about the hotel package and a return home sooner package supported by privately practicing midwives. There has been no delay. As I've said right from the outset, the NT Health Service can cope with an increase of somewhere between 10 and a maximum of 15% increase in the number of births at the Royal Darwin Hospital. There is no delay. Writing to the federal minister, I think the opposition seems to think that writing to the federal minister is based on some decisions that were made in Tasmania, for example, where they have other private health services available in Tasmania. What the member for Daly is trying to compare is apples with oranges, and it's just not going to work. What we have done is written to the Federal Minister in good faith, asking for $35 million to improve the facilities available for birthing families here at the Royal Darwin Hospital. It's not about being able to cope with an increase in births. This is about providing a better facility for mothers moving forward. So I reject wholeheartedly the suggestion by the member for Daly is that we've delayed by 8 months. It simply doesn't hold water. We can deliver babies, and I want to say that what we've seen so far is that just in the last couple of days, as of the Monday the 16th of June, 4 of the 61 affected families by the closure of HealthScope, so 4 families have birthed babies at the Royal Darwin Hospital, and that's been a positive outcome and shows not only that we have the current facilities, yes, they do need to improve, and that's why we've asked for $35 million, but what it shows is that we do have the staff, we have the professional staff being our midwives, obstetricians and services available at the Royal Darwin Hospital to continue delivering babies here in the Northern Territory. So, yes, I reject the suggestion by the member for Daly. You can't compare apples with oranges, and that's what he's trying to do.
Member for Daly. Oh, is it a follow-up question?
Yeah, it's a follow-up question.
Member for
Thank you.
Johnston.
Thank you. Minister, can you confirm whether, or can you comment on whether additional operational funding from NT Health was provided to HealthScope to maintain maternity services at Darwin Private Hospital after you found out that, after they notified you that they would be closing?
What I can confirm, Member for Johnson, is that HealthScope made a decision to close maternity services. This wasn't about operational money. This was about HealthScope informing us that they were no longer continuing to deliver babies at the Darwin Private Hospital. What we were informed is that the significant decline in the number of births at the Darwin Private Hospital had declined to a level where it was no longer viable to deliver maternity services. And I think going back to their media release, which I don't have in front of me, there was also difficulties in attracting and retaining staff in that particular area as well. The decision was solely made by HealthScope that they would close that service, and they had plans in place to repurpose that particular area being used at the private hospital. And I can ask the CEO to expand on some of those conversations that were had at the operational level as well, if you'd like.
My question was whether there was any additional operational funding given to HealthScope.
As I said, there was no additional funding given to HealthScope. The decision was made by HealthScope to close the maternity services. No additional money was going to help keep that service going.
So just to clarify, from the date that HealthScope informed you that they would be closing that service, there was no additional monies given from NT Health to HealthScope?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair, Minister, did you ever conduct any risk assessments or clinical consultations on the safety of discharging new mothers and babies into hotel rooms before publicly promoting this policy?
Thank you for the question. Of course we did. We don't make decisions without the professional clinical advice to support the decisions that we make when it comes to birthing mothers, their families. Of course we got the proper advice to move ahead with those particular packages. What I can do is ask the CEO to perhaps give a bit more detail around some of that work that was done at the operational level to ensure the safety of those packages that we put in place.
Thank you. And within that, can I just ask who you consulted with too, please?
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Member for Daly. When we were advised by HealthScope of their plans to discontinue the service, we were always going to have to plan to absorb those additional births into 𝙍𝙬𝙼𝙍 Hospital, whether that be as public or privately insured patients. As the Minister said, we've been able to establish some further options for privately insured patients, but in a practical sense, it does mean those mums birthing within the facilities at 𝙍𝙬𝙼𝙍. And so very early on in the process to plan that transition into 𝙍𝙬𝙼𝙍, we involved a range of our own staff, both on-staff obstetricians, senior nursing staff and midwives who've all been involved in the planning around that transition and have informed the models of care and the way in which that transition's being managed. So we've had our very best maternity clinical professionals involved in that planning, including our Chief Medical Officer and Directors of Nursing. And just to stress really clearly that entering into one of those privately insured options, whether it be to go to a post-birthing arrangement in a hotel or the package to go home early with support, is only available to people where they've been assessed as clinically safe to discharge. So people who would otherwise be safe to discharge and go home can hand off into one of those privately insured options and take advantage of those extra benefits. Anyone who, for any clinical related reason, whether it be the mother or the baby, is not well enough to be discharged from hospital is not, and they'll stay in RDH and get the care they need until such time as they're ready to go home or to one of those options. So I guess the answer was, who did we consult with? We consulted with a whole range of our clinical professionals within NT Health. In fact, we mobilised our most senior clinically qualified people to work through that transition process and design those pathways. I'm not going to name them on the Hansard today, but these are our very senior medical and nursing professionals involved in maternity care, and it's been a very careful and considered process all the way through. Thank you.
A couple of follow-ups in this. Yeah. Can you? I've heard you say a couple of times, Minister, that the public hospital can. I think you said, first of all, easily cope, and then you said cope with an additional 10% birth. Can you explain how that happens, given that we've heard the huge pressures that the hospital's under, and and we probably have all heard medical professionals and hospital staff and obstetricians talking with great concern about the additional pressures that this is going to place on the public health system?
Thank you, Member. Thank you, Member for Johnson. And I think part of the answer that I gave before is probably didn't go into the detail, but the additional 250 births a year is really in some ways taking us back to the pre-COVID numbers that the maternity section in the 𝙍𝙬𝙼𝙍 Hospital has previously been operating under. So when I say that the maternity service at the 𝙍𝙬𝙼𝙍 Hospital can cope with that and easily cope, what I'm actually referring to, but didn't give that explanation, is that the pre-COVID numbers were actually higher than that. So what we've seen over many years is the ability for our maternity service at the 𝙍𝙬𝙼𝙍 Hospital to cope with those numbers over a long period of time. In regard to comparing numbers and the pressures through emergency versus maternity, that's probably more an operational question. I can get the Chief Executive or one of our experts to give a bit more information about that. Thanks.
I'm sorry, just a follow-up. So is that view supported by the people who are doing the work in the maternity ward?
Look, certainly all the feedback I've had, and I've spoke with some of the at least two of the senior midwives in that area as well. They've reassured me that they're coping with that. So the feedback that I've had direct by speaking to the midwives is that, yes, not only are they coping, but they're safely delivering babies as per usual. These are the experts on the ground every day of the week that are delivering babies at the Royal Darwin Hospital. So I don't have any concerns on the information that's being provided to me.
Thank you. And to be clear, I have absolutely no doubt that people are getting excellent care from the staff at the hospital and that they are doing everything they can. I have heard, and other people may have quite differently, that people have a high level of concern about that they will continue to do that work because that's what they have to do, but the level of pressure that it's putting them under. I have one other question, which is in terms of the Returning Home Sooner package, what is the cost for 2025-26 for that package?
Yeah, in regard to that return home package, all of those costs are borne by the private health insurer.
So no costs from the NT health system?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions on the opening statement?
Yes, there are.
Shadow Minister. Member for Daly. Apologies, Member for Daly. Yeah.
Sorry. And just for the record, for the Minister, I'll move on to ambulance services. Can the Minister or Department confirm if funding towards reintegrating the ambulance service back into government hands has been considered?
The answer is no. We've looked at the Western Australian model and the cost of bringing it back under government control. We have considered that.
Thank you, Minister. Through the Chair, what steps is the Minister taking to address ongoing staff and union concerns about governance and transparency at St John's Ambulance?
What I would say is that we're working closely with St John's, and what I'll do is I'll get the Chief Executive to explain a bit further about the work that's going on, because the Chief Executive is working very closely with St John's in regard to the issues. So I'll ask the Chief Executive to provide some more detail around that answer.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Member for Daly, for the question. The Department is working with St John's in a whole range of areas related to strengthening clinical governance. We have, over the course of this year, instituted a new clinical governance committee, which I chair as the Chief Executive and has senior officials from NT Health and St John's Ambulance on that. We're implementing a range of measures aimed at strengthening the governance of clinical matters and practice within St John's, many of which were identified in an independent review undertaken by Dr. Richard Ellis. At this point in time, around 3/4 of those recommendations from Dr. Ellis have been implemented and applied, and there's some we're still working through. But we work really closely with St John's. We meet with them every month and monitor our implementation of those actions, and I will continue to chair that governance arrangement until such time as those matters are all fully resolved and we're in a more steady state operation, at which point I'll probably hand over to someone more clinically focused to maintain that ongoing clinical governance oversight of St John's. But the short answer is there's a whole range of activities there. There's a very senior committee oversighting that action, and we're getting really good partnership and cooperation with St John's.
Thank you. I had no further questions in regards to ambulance services unless there are the other members. Yep, no problem. Thank you, Chair. Minister, I note you were forced to withdraw yourself from the Rural Medicine Australian Conference after doctors' planned protests over your government's law and order policies. Why won't you listen to the concerns raised by health professionals about the health impacts on your justice reforms?
I think you said I was forced to withdraw. Look, I just want to reject that statement right from the outset. Suggesting that I was forced to withdraw from any conferences, I find it actually quite offensive. Being the minister, I make decisions in consultation with my team every day of the week where I'm best, where my role can be best used right across the Northern Territory. So these are decisions that are made every day of the week. So I'm not sure where you're coming from when you suggest that I've been forced to do anything, because, as I said, my decisions are carefully planned, and sometimes even decisions that I do make in advance chop and change at very short notice. So it's so that's part of the answer to what you seem to be suggesting, which I totally reject. But when it comes to justice, I'm not sure really what you're suggesting, but I'm out listening to health professionals every day of the week, and not only in remote areas, but I'm out there look, I co-chair the Northern Territory Executive Council on Aboriginal Affairs, so dealing with APONT, representatives from AMSANT. These are constant conversations that I'm having right across the board very often in regard to justice issues, health issues, Aboriginal affairs issues, housing issues, local government. I'm out there and about every day of the week having those conversations. I've tried to give you guidance around looking, listening and learning, but that's what I'm doing.
I don't need guidance from you.
Gentlemen, I'm just going to say to start with, if you're addressing one another, it is through me. So, Minister, if you're addressing the member for Daly, it's member for Daly as if you're talking to me, and likewise, member for Daly. I want to take the yous out of it, so we'll address through the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as I was saying, I've often tried to explain to the member for Daly the importance of looking, listening and learning, and I'm doing that every day of the week. And so when it comes to justice and health issues, I'm out there listening to people. But what I want to do is reassure the Estimates Committee that when it comes to justice and health issues, yes, there is a connection between both, but what we are ensuring is that from a health perspective, not only are we creating jobs for people here in the Northern Territory, we're doing our very best with the funding that we get to tackle some of those underlying issues around health, not only in remote areas but right across the Northern Territory. So that's where we're at when it comes to dealing with all of those issues. But I just want to reassure that yes, I'm out there listening and I'm comfortable with the work that our government is doing to tackle these underlying issues that we see right across the Northern Territory.
So through the chair, just talking about the travelling and the remoteness, I just wanted to understand there has been, I can see a tender released around work for safe drinking water. So can I just confirm, is it the intention of the Health Department to work on developing policy to then create a Safe Drinking Water Act? I acknowledge that that work was being done under the previous government with the Health Department. There has been a tender that was released to a Victorian company, but I'm just following up, Minister, is your department working on the development of a Safe Drinking Water Act?
What I would say is that No, we're not currently looking at legislation around safe drinking. But what we are doing is we're out working in the communities and to tackle these issues around safe drinking water. And this is an ongoing issue that's been around for a number of years. What we do need to do is focus on making sure that communities have access to the basic essential services, and that being power, water, sewage services in those communities. At the moment, I can give one example, particularly at 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙑𝘼𝙔𝙍𝙍, and I think 𝙍𝙀𝙬𝑚 is the same at the moment, where there's elevated fluoride levels in the water, for example. And at the moment at 𝙍𝙀𝙀𝙑𝙀𝙀𝙀, there is bottled water being taken to the community, made available to mothers with babies and young people, I think up to the age of around teenage years, because of the effects that fluoride may have on brain development.
So through the Minister, I just wanted to confirm, I'm happy, I've got the tender number here if you need it, but it was a tender for a request for services under the panel contract, assessment of economic and social impacts of Safe Drinking Water Act. The outcome, an assessment of the economic and social impact of introducing a Safe Drinking Water Act and completion of regulation impact statement as required under the Northern Territory Government's regulation making framework. I acknowledge that that is work that was being commissioned. Mike's on. Commissioned under the former Labor government with the Department of Health. So I guess my question is that work still being developed? And does the CLP government have a commitment to introduce a Safe Drinking Water Act?
As I said before, we don't have a commitment to bring in a Safe Drinking Water Act. I'm not aware of the tender that you're speaking about, but as I've said, we're actively out in the communities to try and ensure that safe drinking water is available in communities. What we do know is that there's a number of communities that are water stressed, and we do know that some of the challenges in remote areas. In regard to that particular tender, I'm happy to take that question on notice and find out more about it, but we don't have that information in front of us today.
Sure.
Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙀, please restate the question for the record.
Thank you. My question, Minister, is can you confirm if the Northern Territory CLP government is committed to delivering a Safe Drinking Water Act?
Already answered.
Yep, I'm just putting it all on the record so you can put it in writing for me. And can you confirm what has happened to the tender that went out to look at the economic and social impacts around developing a Safe Drinking Water Act and regulation? And that was a tender to the value of $62,000, and it was AGC21-0265, Assessment of Economic and Social Impact of Safe Drinking Water.
Minister, do you accept the question?
Look, as I said, I'm happy to find out about the tender. I've answered the question in regard to whether we intend to bring in a Safe Drinking Water Act. I've answered no.
Okay.
That question has been answered, but if the member wants to restate the question in regard to the tender, I'm happy to take that on notice.
Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙀, are you happy to amend the question?
Yes,
to the
certainly.
Second part?
I'm absolutely happy to give the Minister a hand there. Minister, could you please confirm...
I'll just finish the process. Sorry, Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙀𝙀. Minister, do you accept the amended question?
Yes, I do.
The question asked by the member for 𝙍𝙀𝙀𝙀 of the Minister has been allocated the number 7.5. Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙀𝙀.
Thank you. No further questions on the safe drinking water.
Thank you. I've still got questions for the opening statement.
Yeah, so we're still on opening statement. I'll give it to Shadow Minister. I will note Shadow Minister, Member for Johnston's also has questions, but you have the floor.
Thank you. Minister, can you outline official purpose and ministerial relevance of your trip on the 30th of January 2025?
Can you please enlighten me where I was on the 30th of January 2025, and I can explain further. I've got my diary in front of me. which is called Facebook. I'm happy to look on there if it is relevant to your question.
Bet you there's a few deadly selfies there.
Thank you, Minister. I believe it was in regards to a trip to Daily Waters.
Yes, I'm also the Minister for Essential Services, and it's extremely important. I'm also the member for Berkeley. So in regard to my ministerial portfolios, as the Minister for Essential Services, responsible for the operations of Power and Water, Territory Generation and Jacana, I'm not sure if you understand, but gas is extremely important to generate power in the Northern Territory. What I wanted to do was reassure myself that we have a constant source of gas available to keep the lights on here in the Northern Territory. That was the purpose of my trip.
I will just say, do you have a new line of questioning?
Or did you have something to add?
No, it was just that if we're going to pursue this, making sure it's health related, that's for all. Over to you, Member for Daly.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I think the Minister has clarified that trip, but can you explain the nearly $3,000 in other expenses against your ministerial colleague for that trip? And what were those other expenses?
Look, I can't explain anything that another minister has done in his role as a minister.
Okay, thank you. That's all I've got
I can
for
answer
this.
questions about my ministerial role, but I can't answer questions about somebody else's.
I'll just step in. We'll move on.
I think
Yeah,
Justine
Member for
had some
Johnston.
Thank you, Chair. In your opening statement, Minister, you talked about, I think you called it the multi-purpose ward or the modular ward. I note that the budget last year allocated $25 million for that ward. But the contract was awarded for only $18.2 million. Are you able to explain the difference between those two numbers, and also whether or not the amount in this year's budget includes any operational costs?
Thank you for the question, Member for Johnson. In regard to those specific figures, as I said during my opening statement, we have in this year's budget, let me just get that figure again for you.
Sorry, I think it's $17.7 million is in the budget papers.
Yeah, so what I said in my opening statement is that work is well underway at the Royal Darwin Hospital to construct a new 18.2 million 32-bed multi-purpose ward. The ward has been designed to allow for future expansion with the ability to construct 2 additional wards above the new building in the future. Your question was around, does that include
any operational costs? Yeah.
I'll ask the CEO. I'm not sure if we got the answer to that at the moment. Given that the ward's not open yet, I'll just see if we can clarify whether the operational money is here for this year or for the following year. I'll ask the CEO to respond.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Member for Johnson, for the question. No, there's not operational money in the budget for the operation of the new modular ward. We expect that by the time that is online and able to accommodate patients at the completion of the construction, we'd be in the subsequent financial year, so we'll pursue that in the next budget round.
So that's, the time frame for that, when is it expected that that ward will be operational?
Towards the middle of next year, we would expect the construction to be completed and ready to start providing patient care, which is reasonably well aligned to the financial year cycle for next budget, next financial year.
Okay, thank you.
Shadow Minister, do you have any final questions on opening statement?
I do, Chair.
Shadow Minister.
Just get to them. Minister, can you provide a progress update on the staff accommodation block at the Tennant Creek Hospital, which was budgeted 2024-25, an allocation of $1.27 million for this project?
Sorry, just missed that. Can you just repeat that? I was just looking at a document then. So.
No problem. Minister, can you provide an update on the staff accommodation block at the Tennant Creek Hospital? The staff accommodation block was budgeted for the 2024-25 with an allocation of $1.27 million for this project. And just wanted an update on that project.
Thank you, Member for Daly. Can I just say that the nurses' accommodation at the Tennant Creek Hospital, this has been a ongoing issue for quite some time now. In fact, the former Labor government announced back in, I think, around about 2020 or 21, so we're talking 4 years ago, the former Labor government said that they would build 12 single-bedroom units on the grounds of the Tennant Creek Hospital 4 years ago. In regard to that, there is a Commonwealth contribution to that project, but what I would say is that over that 4 years under the Labor government, not one shovel hit the ground in regard to that particular project. So the current status of that project is that coming into government, that particular project has been out to tender. The costings unfortunately were above the budget that we had for that particular project. But it also goes back to the former government's infrastructure program. We've often heard of the multi-billion-dollar program that was apparently being delivered by the former government. But what we did find out, of course, coming to the government was that there was only just $300 million in cash to support a multi-billion-dollar infrastructure program. So at the moment, we do continue to have the Commonwealth contribution to that project, and working with the Minister for Logistics and Infrastructure, I've had conversations with the Minister about how do we deliver that project, given that the Labor government had no cash in their program to be able to deliver on this particular, and I say it's a very important project because we do see a shortage of housing in Tennant Creek, and this is just one of a number of issues that Labor left us with when we came to government. The one I often talk about is not only did we not get those 12 units delivered under the former government, but back in 2018, the former government promised $5 million to build a new Bradag facility. That's alcohol rehabilitation and treatment facility in Tennant Creek. And when they made that announcement back in 2018, they also said that they were going to free up 19 public houses in Tennant Creek. So when you look at that commitment, that's 31 homes that they promised, not only in 2018 through the Bradag announcement, but they also promised 12 units back in around 2020. So effectively what Tennant Creek has missed out on is 31 homes coming back on the market in Tennant Creek. So this has been an ongoing issue in Tennant Creek, and it's been severely hampered by the inability of the former Labor government to get things moving in Tennant Creek. When I talk about Bradag, when I talk about the 12 units that they promised as well, not one shovel has hit the ground in regard to the Bradag project, which was to free up 19 public homes, but not one shovel has hit the ground when it comes to delivering 12 one-bedroom units in Tennant Creek. What we are doing is getting on with the job, and we're looking at options now to ensure that we have a Northern Territory government contribution to make sure that those 12 units are delivered in Tennant Creek, because we have a critical shortage of housing. We have nurses and doctors currently residing in private government head leased properties. having our own government employee housing being 12 units at the hospital will make a significant difference to housing in Tennant Creek. So we're now looking at options through the private market to ensure that those 12 units are being delivered in Tennant Creek.
Thank you, Minister. We will now break for 30 minutes. Time now is midday. We will reconvene at 12:30 p.m. We are now adjourned. We'll crack in. So, Minister, you can provide that answer, and then we'll return to questions on the opening statement. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have an answer to a question taken on notice. The question number is 7.3. In answer to that question, Royal Darwin Hospital has Aboriginal interpreter staff available by booking 24 hours a day. There are 5 interpreters based on site at the Royal Darwin Hospital. The Palmerston Regional Hospital, interpreters can be booked for an in-person appointment, or 24-hour Aboriginal interpreter service phone line is available. In Tennant Creek Hospital utilise telephone services with the Alice Springs Aboriginal Interpreter Service team, noting there are some Aboriginal interpreter staff in the Barclay Business Hub. However, there are no set hours for the hub. Katherine Hospital has 1 Aboriginal interpreter service interpreter from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday to Friday. The Alice Springs Hospital has 5 Aboriginal liaison officers who provide interpreting services being provided Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:21. Aboriginal interpreter services are engaged as required. In regards to Gove, the Gove District Hospital has 1 Aboriginal interpreter service interpreter available 9:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. Monday to Friday. Thank you.
Sorry, Minister, what were the hours at Royal Darwin Hospital?
The Royal Darwin Hospital has Aboriginal interpreter staff available by booking 24 hours a day. There are 5 interpreters based on site at the Royal Darwin Hospital, and Palmerston interpreters can be booked for an in-person appointment, or 24-hour Aboriginal interpreter service phone line is available.
Do you have the hours for the on-site interpreters?
We would have to get the hours, but the Aboriginal interpreter staff are available by booking 24 hours a day. 5 interpreters are based on site. We don't have the particular hours, but of course there is the phone line service available.
Thank you. Would it be possible to get that? I know you provided that for other sites, so if it'd be possible to get that, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
I do have an answer, Mr. Chair. 8 till 12, Monday to Friday.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions on the opening statement? Shadow Minister. Oh, yeah.
Yep. Thank you, Chair. Minister, were any experts or health experts consulted on before the scrapping of the floor price, considering many experts have come out and said that this will lead to more drinking and more harm? And if so, who was consulted?
I don't think it's relevant to the opening statement. It certainly wasn't discussed in the opening statement, but it does sit in probably output 3, but in regards to the floor price, that was a decision made in Parliament. The legislation has passed. It doesn't specifically relate to my portfolio. That comes under the Minister for Tourism and Hospitality. Who introduced that legislation?
Thank you. But there is a health element to this in regards of scrapping the floor price, making it cheaper for people to buy alcohol. So I'm just wondering if you, as the Health Minister, consulted any health experts on the impacts of scrapping the minimum floor price.
What I would say in regard to the floor price is that the floor price was introduced by the Labor government, I think, back in 2019. What we did see over that period of time was an increase in domestic violence, family and sexual violence right across the Northern Territory, alcohol-related crime. Even in my electorate, Mr Chair, what I saw on the ground every day of the week was a significant increase in violence, but also a significant increase in secondary supply of alcohol. What we saw from the floor price was that, and there's this mistaken belief that in places like Tennant Creek that there would be some return to cask wine or some commentary around that by the opposition. But in reality, there's been no cask wine in places like Tennant Creek for I don't know how long. But what we did see from the floor price was an increase in secondary supply, but also what we did see was people going from normal alcohol to hard spirits. So what the floor price was actually doing was driving people away, and they were using more and more hard spirits. And this included secondary supply where we saw people buying alcohol, bottles of rum, for example, and I'm sure there's Bush members that have probably seen the same. We saw an increase in secondary supply, people paying anywhere up to $500 just for a bottle of rum, and it's as I've always said, when people are paying that sort of money for a bottle of rum anywhere in the Northern Territory, what it means is that there's no food on the table for young people in those families. And this is this was a Labor policy that contributed to higher crime rates, higher cases of domestic, family and sexual violence, higher numbers of alcohol-related crime, and higher number of alcohol-related assaults, violence against people in the Northern Territory. It's clear that the floor price drove people to harder spirits, and what we've done is implemented a range of changes, including nuisance public drinking laws, to tackle some of the real issues around alcohol. That's the work that we did prior to removing the floor price in the Northern Territory.
Chair, I've got some follow-up questions on this, but I'm happy to ask them in the against the alcohol output.
Very well. I've written that down. Member for Arafura.
Minister, in your opening statement, you've mentioned Gunbalanya Health Clinic. I mean, the Gunbalanya health moving over to Aboriginal controlled health, which I welcome very much. I've recently met with Red Lily, and I suppose my question to you is that in regards to the health centre and the new bills or the tender being put out, they asked me to put that on notice and try and get a date or where you're up with in regards to the discussion around it.
Thank you, Member for Arafura, for that question. And in regards to Gunbalanya, the planned transition to Red Lily is on track to happen on the 1st of July. And I must say a lot of work has gone into that transition, and we're really looking forward as a health department to see Red Lily Health Board come on and manage that particular health clinic, because as a government we're focused on returning services to Aboriginal people in remote areas. We came to government to say that we're all about empowering communities. We want to ensure that there's jobs on country for people living in remote areas. What we haven't been able to do in this budget is deliver a new health clinic. I've spoken about this before. Look, I'd love to be here today telling you that we are going to build the health clinic, but the reality is that coming into government we were faced with a large deficit in the budget. We've examined the infrastructure budget, and as we've said many times before, what we saw was the former government making lots and lots of promises regarding the delivery of infrastructure right across the Northern Territory. And the program that everybody talks about was billions of dollars. It was nothing more than a wish list in many cases. But what we did see was that the former Labor government only contributed about $300 million to that infrastructure program. So the cash, the program sounded great, billions of dollars in the program, billions of dollars worth of projects in the program, but you actually need cash to deliver those. So look, we haven't ruled out delivering that clinic, and as I said today, I'd love to be here today saying that we will deliver a new clinic at 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙑𝘍𝙬. We will keep that on the program, but what I can't do today is give a specific date when we will deliver that. But working together with Red Lily has been a great partnership so far, and we're looking forward to them taking over on the 1st of July and delivering services there at 𝙍𝙀𝙑𝙍𝙬.
Thank you, Minister. Just one more question. During negotiations, Red Lily and government, between Red Lily and government, it was identified that there were insufficient accommodations for identified staffing numbers. So this is with the current system that's there now. At 𝙍𝙀𝙑𝙍𝙬, there are 14 residential full-time clinical staff and approximately 5 specialist outreach staff who provide regular visiting services, and around 11 available houses. There are similar issues that Red Lily manage as well in the islands of West Arnhem, including Mindjalung and Croker, Warrawee, South Goulburn Island. Is there any discussion around expanding in this space?
Yeah, thank you, Member for Arafura. And this has been an ongoing issue in remote areas for quite some time. The absence of government employee housing. There's been challenges, I suppose, would be one way to describe it in remote areas, the ability to house staff. And of course, when you can't house staff, it has an impact on attraction and retention of people in those remote areas. What I would say is that from a health perspective, we would certainly like to be able to assist Red Lily in accommodating all of their staff. At the moment, based on those numbers that you've given me, I'm quite happy to have a look at that further when we get into the housing portfolio, and I'll have a better idea what the plans are around future government employee housing. I can't commit that there are plans for 𝙍𝙀𝙍𝙍𝙍, but it's certainly something that we can take on board when we get to the housing portfolio. I'm happy to look at GH not only at 𝙍𝙀𝙍𝙍, but perhaps other remote areas as well.
Thank you, Minister.
Member for Johnston.
Just wondering what output the 𝙍𝙀𝙀𝙀, the Sexual Assault Referral Centre, would come under.
Output 2, Member for Johnston. 2 point. Yeah, I don't have it listed specifically in the outputs, but it'd be output 2.
I've just got one brief question. Can I ask it here against the opening statement, or?
And for Johnston, you can. It'll be up to the Minister if he wants to, if it wasn't discussed in the opening statement, where it should go. Member for Johnston.
Just wondering if you can say how much funding's allocated to 𝙍𝙀𝙀𝙀, to sexual assault referral centres to assist victim survivors from remote communities with food, accommodation and support when they come into the regionally based 𝙍𝙀 for forensic testing, treatment and counselling.
So, sorry, member, are you looking for an overall figure for when people come into town, what the costs are for?
Yeah, I'm looking for what, if there is budget allocated to support those costs.
It is related to patient travel services, Member for Johnson, but I'll ask the CEO to give a bit more detail around that for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Member for Johnson. Certainly where someone needs to travel to access those services, there's provision in the budget for patient-assisted travel services for that. It's not a specific line item with a particular allocation to it with that level of granularity, but it is certainly catered to in the budget that funds patient-assisted travel for all sorts of reasons. So there is funding available for that when people need to come into town to access that service.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions on the opening statement? The committee will now consider the estimates of proposed expenditure contained in the Appropriation Bill 2526 as they relate to the Department of Health. Are there any agency-related whole-of-government questions on budget and fiscal strategies? That concludes consideration of agency-related whole-of-government questions on budget and fiscal strategies. The committee will now proceed to Output Group 1, Hospital Services and Support, Output 1.1, Hospital Services and Support. Are there any questions? That concludes consideration of Output Group 1. The committee will now move to Output Group 2, Primary Healthcare, Output 2.1, Remote Primary Healthcare. Are there any questions? Member for Johnston, we are on Output Group 2. I believe you had a question for it. We're on Output 2.1, Remote Primary Healthcare. Oh, yeah. Okay, no dramas. That concludes consideration of Output 2.1. I'll now call for questions on Output 2.2, Urban Primary Healthcare. Are there any questions? That concludes consideration of Output 2.2. I'll now proceed to Output 2.3, Territory-Wide Community Services. Are there any questions?
No.
That concludes consideration of Output 2.3 and Output Group 2. The committee will now move on to Output Group 3, Community Treatment and Extended Care, Output 3.1, Alcohol and Other Drugs. Are there any questions? Member for Mulca.
Thank you. Through the chair to the minister, I'd like to, what alcohol rehabilitation services are there for people to attend based on country? We want to bring people back to country, but we need to have somewhere to help them recover from drug and alcohol dependency. What is happening to help people return to country?
Thank you, Member for Mulca. In regard to alcohol treatment services, we might just change over officials while we...
Absolutely. We'll just rest in place for 1 minute as we swap officials.
While we're doing that, I think the member for 𝙍𝙀𝙑𝘀𝙀𝙀𝙀𝙀𝙀 daughter and wife are in the group, or he's blowing kisses at someone else.
It wasn't me, Member.
Welcome to Parliament House. What's her name? Cosette and Alice. Welcome.
Thank you again, Member for Guyula. The Howes just love all things democracy.
Oh, that's
so.
Thank you. And I'd just like to introduce Cecelia Gore, the Deputy Chief Executive of Commissioning and System Improvement. Member for Mulga, in regard to your question about services on country, we do have a range of services across the Northern Territory when it comes to sobering up shelters, residential rehabilitation beds. But what I can say is that $900,000 has been committed to establish a new strength and healing service in the East Arnhem region aimed at expanding treatment capacity for youth across the top end. The Strength and Healing Service will provide support to young people experiencing moderate to high levels of vulnerability. The aim is to facilitate culturally driven support on country, improve accessibility to appropriate supports and provide respite as required. There are negotiations currently underway with MeWatch for service delivery to commence in the 25-26 financial year. But in regard to services overall, I might ask our Deputy Chief Executive to expand on what's happening in some of these remote areas when it comes to alcohol treatment and rehabilitation.
Thank you, Minister. For the record, Cecelia Gore, Deputy Chief Executive for NT Health. We have about $27 million in this budget going forward devoted to funding for non-government and Aboriginal community-controlled organisations. We fund 165 residential rehab beds in all 5 regions. But in addition to that, we are increasingly working with local organisations in remote areas to do exactly what you've been talking about, Member for Mulga, where they can apply for and get support to run on-country respite programs, connection to culture programs, through the funding received through the NT-RAE agreement. Communities are currently working on community alcohol plans where they can, as a community, decide what they would like to see improve safety and reduce harm. And once they've developed that plan, they can then get resources for things like on-country travel, physical supports like petrol or camping equipment, as well as bringing in additional therapeutic responses, traditional healers, social and emotional wellbeing programs. We've got the Remote AOD Workforce Program, which is also funded under the NT-RAE, which employs about 59 people across numerous communities in the NT, both for NT Health and ACCHOs, who are available to run men's programs, women's programs, programs for young people in those communities. And they then link in with our more specialist tertiary clinical services for extra supports.
Through the chair. Thank you, Minister. Just in relation to the community alcohol plans that the Ms. Gore just referenced, can you just tell us how many community alcohol plans have been completed and implemented to date?
Yes, as of the 31st of March 2025, 85 communities have received community alcohol plan information sessions. Of those 84 are actively engaged in community alcohol management planning and implementation. And from this number so far, 20 communities have community alcohol plans approved at the community level.
Thank you. And how much has been invested in community-designed harm reduction initiatives, and what support is being provided to communities to implement those initiatives?
I'll just hand over to Cecelia Gore to give that detail for you. Thanks.
Thank you, Minister. The total investment for what we call community-led solutions is $1.7 million across the 2 financial years, so 24-25 and 25-26. What usually happens in the process is that after communities have thought about what kind of thing they want, the team on the ground, so there's 9 staff who work across the NT in those communities, will then help them shape up how you turn that into a project proposal and then support them to fund it and go forward. In many of the communities, they already have trusted organisations that they regularly work with, whether they're justice groups or the local services. In others, we will provide advice about how they could seek support through the various land councils or AMSANT or APONT. The NT Indigenous Business Network are often a key source of advice about who would be good to do this work. And then we execute grant contracts with those providers to deliver what the community has asked for.
Thank you. And is there, what's the monitoring and evaluation framework that's in place to be assessing the success of those initiatives?
The FFA, the Federal Funding Agreement, which through which that money comes, has a broad monitoring and evaluation framework which mostly drives its indicators from community development. So how have we seen community participation? Has the community's strengths and capacity been built over the time of the project? And then we also provide for communities to define what they would like the success, how they would know that it's been successful. So it's very local. In addition to that, the overall NT-RAY agreement as a whole has a monitoring, evaluation and learning, or MEAL, framework being applied to it, which includes progress against closing the gap, as well as what can be visibly seen as reductions in harm in the community.
Thank you. And in terms of outcomes that are publicly available once that evaluation's happening, can you let us know how, whether and how that will be shared?
Yes.
Thank you.
So when alcohol policy got transferred to NT Health in the end of last year, one of the responsibilities came to continue to develop what is going to be called a portal or a website where community can agree to upload their stories, tell good stories about what they've done in their local areas. That will be the site of the broad-based alcohol indicators as well, road deaths, alcohol-related harm, etc. And then we're just working at the moment with Housing, Local Government and Community Development around what's an appropriate level of indicators at a community level which respects people's data sovereignty but also doesn't identify negatively small communities. So that's still being worked through with the Crime and Research Division of Attorney Generals as well, around what's a data story that can be produced monthly or quarterly that everybody can see, and then what are the more specific things that a community might want to hold and not share quite so broadly. But the overall approach is to try and tell good stories of community action, and so we'll try and share as much as we can.
Thank you. In the public sphere and in terms of informing your work, the data informing your work, I'm presuming that's ongoing and some of that will be available?
Minister? Yes, we have a partnership group that involves health, police, NIAA, AMSANT, and that group regularly, monthly meets and looks at what we know is happening and then collectively talks about some of these dilemmas around where can stuff be shared and where shouldn't it be. And then that oversight continues through the NT Aboriginal Health Forum and other venues. Where we can, we make stuff available publicly and let people know it will be public, and where people would like us not to do that, we've got ability to do that under the governance as well.
Thank you. I'll hand back to the member for Mauka. Thank you. Okay. No more. Okay. All right. I've got.
Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙑𝘖𝙀.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just in the interest of time, the opposition will put all further health questions through on written notice. I'm just as eager as the Minister is to get on to housing and local government and Aboriginal affairs. So no further questions from the opposition. The health spokesperson from the opposition has said that they'll be placed on notice.
Thank you, Member for 𝙍𝙀𝙀𝙀. Are there any further questions on Output 3.1? Member for Johnston.
Just A few more under alcohol, thank you. Minister, you talked about the minimum unit price. This relates a little bit to my data question. I think when you removed the minimum unit price, you said that it was not working to reduce harm. So I'm interested in what the government's doing to monitor the impact of the removal of the MUP, and whether we'll see harms increase as a result of this policy change.
Thank you, Member for Johnson. What we are doing is continuing to monitor crime right across the Northern Territory. I spoke about the crime statistics that we had seen over quite a lengthy period under the previous government. What we will do is continue to monitor crime right across the board. But as we said before, we have introduced alternatives, which is nuisance public drinking law. So what we'll continue to do is look at what options that we can do as a government, including the nuisance public drinking laws, the banned drinker register. We'll be looking at how best to utilise the banned drinker register, issue banned drinker orders, all of those aspects. All of that work is constantly being monitored through the department.
Thank you, Minister. Understood. I'm particularly interested in how you are gathering data to look at the impact of the removal of the MUP, and maybe if you can explain how access to $6 bottles of wine and $14 casks contributes to minimising harm caused by alcohol.
Sorry, how it contributes?
How does it contribute to minimising harm? If our aim is to minimise harm, how does minimum unit price contribute to that?
As I said before, the minimum unit price was introduced by the Minister for Tourism and Hospitality when it comes to the management of alcohol overall. Our policy around nuisance public drinking, looking at the banned drinker register, looking at the impact of alcohol across the board is an ongoing cycle of work that is already happening within the department. Our Deputy Chief Executive may be able to contribute further to that around the monitoring of the impacts of alcohol across the board.
Particularly in relation to the MUP, I'm interested in.
We don't have an MUP.
The removal of the MUP. Apologies.
Thank you, Minister. I think the range of policy measures which look to limit supply are multifactorial. So BDR reduces supply in one particular way, MUP did in a different kind of way, liquor, alcohol management plans, posies on bottle shops, they all make a contribution. And the various evaluations which have occurred about looking at those individual policy elements by themselves keep saying they interact with each other. And so what we will do and continue to do is monitor those key indicators that the Minister has called out, alcohol-related emergency department presentations, domestic sexual family violence presentations, etc. The one thing that minimum unit price did in that work was it applied to Darwin in the ways that none of those other measures did. And so we can compare Darwin and to other areas of the territory. We're not specifically looking just for minimum unit price because, as the Minister has noted, other things have come in since it was repealed. So I think what we're looking for is a safer territory and a territory where we can see drop in consumption and drop in those harms, and that we will continue to take advice around which bits next of the policy are going to best affect that.
Thank you. And given that, is there the intention to develop a coordinated alcohol harm reduction strategy for the NT? And if so, has any funding been allocated to that in this budget?
Thank you, Member for Johnson. Coming into government, as we've made very clear, we want to target alcohol-related harm, alcohol-related crime. What we are working through at the moment is our policy around mandatory rehabilitation and what that might look like. We're also looking at a range of options to better utilise the banned drinker register and other options to look at how we can support people with affected by alcohol, other drugs. We're focused on remote treatment service provision and workforce development. There's a whole range of alcohol policy that we're working through at the moment to move forward. We'll have further announcements on that as we work through that, but what I can say at the moment is that we do have a team working on our alcohol policy moving forward, and over the next few months we'll have more to say on that.
Thank you. Can you indicate whether there'll be a comprehensive alcohol policy, or is it going to continue to be the kinds of things you've described as in specific areas of action?
Well, all of those form part of our policy.
Yeah.
I don't think you can look at those in isolation to each other.
A strategy, sorry.
So you can't look at any of those in isolation to each other.
Not.
And part of our overall strategy will include the consideration of alcohol policy measures, how that will reduce crime, tackle problem drinking in a coordinated way across government. That will include mandatory rehabilitation. How that's applied and who will that apply to is still being worked through by the department with consultation with me at the moment. So there's a lot of work going on at the moment to see how we can best tackle alcohol-related harm here in the Northern Territory. What we want to see is we're not against responsible drinking, and I've made that very clear a number of times. What we want to be able to do is work with people that are causing harm to others as a result of alcohol being consumed or alcohol and other drugs being consumed by those people. So that policy is being worked on. And of course we want to focus on rehabilitation and treatment services at the local level. So all of that work is being pulled together at the moment, and we'll have further announcements over the next few months.
Thank you. I'm specifically interested in whether there's, I'm not sure what the right language is, but you've answered it for now, thank you.
All of that will go hand in hand together. What we call that at the end might be just a matter of interpretation, but what I want to reassure everybody that all of these issues related to alcohol and other drugs go hand in hand with each other, and we want to have a comprehensive policy in place to address those issues.
Thank you. And just two further brief questions. I think I was referred to ask you this question in relation to 𝙍𝙇𝙍𝙎. What has the government committed to in the health budget for the prevention of 𝙍𝙍 and the assessment and treatment services for people living with 𝙍𝙍?
Thank you, Member for Johnson. I'll ask our Deputy Chief Executive to give you some detail around that.
Thank you, Minister. I guess the very first thing this government's doing to work towards preventing 𝙍𝙍 is all of the work that happens in alcohol policy, which tries to reduce consumption broadly and to set messages to the community about responsible drinking, trying to drive down alcohol consumption broadly. In addition to that, currently there's $603,000 for 5 regional coordinators in art shows across the NT. Those positions work with local communities to work on education materials, awareness raising materials, engaging with both men and women who are of childbearing age to, again, put out those health promotion messages and early intervention messages about not consuming alcohol during pregnancy. Those service coordinators also then assist with people who are then trying to access assessment services and therapeutic services. We have work in both Central Australian Aboriginal Congress where we work alongside them. The majority of the funding for CEATS, which most people are aware of as their service, comes from the federal government and through philanthropic support. NT Health provides the paediatricians and other allied health supports once the children are assessed. We have a similar arrangement with 𝙍𝙬𝙍𝙎𝙏 up here in Darwin, where our teams work alongside them. They don't receive specific Commonwealth funding. It's an area of ongoing advocacy for them. But our job is to then provide the therapeutic supports once the children are assessed in those settings.
Is there any current data for the NT in relation to 𝙍𝙍? I think there was a previous strategy that went 2018 to 2024, but I haven't been able to find any evaluation or publicly available reports on that.
We haven't. Data for FASD is really difficult to collate because the search for a diagnosis is a really complicated tool. In recent years, we've been working closely with the Department of Education and the Department of now People, Sport and Culture around functional assessment. And so being able to assess neurodevelopmental delay for whatever reason, whether it's alcohol-related or trauma-related or poverty-related, is where we can then get assistance for young people. And so there's work underway right now with particularly Department of Education and Office of Disability around modelling what we think the future needs for the Territory are under the change to what's been called foundational supports by the Commonwealth. So the ability to work with whole communities to address children who've got delayed development rather than a NDIS light model where it's just based on an individual child. I think that will very much better serve the needs of the NT in addressing that generational disadvantage, particularly in our remote centres, and where we don't have sufficient allied health workforce to meaningfully provide services in a way which is really going to make a difference.
Thank you. And so just to confirm, there was no evaluation of the previous strategy, the 2018 to 24.
No, that's correct. The previous strategy tried to describe a range of activities occurring in a range of settings, so from prevention to early intervention to treatment. So as an overall, we don't evaluate the strategy, but we certainly have looked at some of those specific programs, like the regional coordinator roles were evaluated through NT Aboriginal Health Forum and were considered a really worthwhile investment to continue. But most of what we're describing here is the provision of health services to children and their families.
Thank you. No further questions, Chair.
Mr. Chair, I do have a answer to a question taken on notice, if I could give that, Mr. Chair.
Please, Minister.
Thank you. It relates to question number 7.4, a question taken on notice. The answer that I do, this relates to the number of remote nurses that a government employee employed versus agency nursing staff in hospitals, and what is the government versus agency numbers. So the answer that I have here is primary healthcare has utilised year to date 105 FTEs of agency labour. This represents 23% of total nursing staff. At the Alice Springs Hospital has utilised year to date 63 FTEs of agency labour. This represents 11% of total nursing staff. At the Gove Hospital has utilised year to date 4 FTEs of agency labour. This represents 6% of total nursing staff. At the Catherine Hospital, they've utilised year to date 14 FTEs of agency labour. This represents 15% of total nursing staff. Palmerston Hospital has utilised 1 FTE of agency labour. This represents less than 1% of total nursing staff. For the Royal Darwin Hospital, they've utilised 41 FTEs of agency labour. This represents 4% of total nursing staff. At the Tennant Creek Hospital, they've utilised 16 FTEs of agency labour, and this represents 30% of total nursing staff. Overall, the NT Health has utilised year to date 139 FTE agency nurses across its hospitals, and this represents 7% of our total nursing staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Are there any further questions on output 3.1?
No.
This concludes consideration of output 3.1. The committee will now consider output 3.2, mental health. Are there any questions?
No.
This concludes consideration of output 3.2. I will now call on questions on output 3.3, aged care. Member for Kurrama.
Thank you, Minister. You may recall during my maiden speech, one of the issues I really highlighted was the lack of investment in our aged care facilities, and I gave personal examples of people I know who wonderful people who couldn't get into aged care but were basically then kept at Royal Darwin Hospital for maybe 4 months or more, and that was quite sad. So at the time I did urge our government to look at investing in new aged care facilities across the territory. I know you touched on it in your opening speech, but could you just update us on what initiatives we've done to date or what's planned in terms of strengthening aged care facilities across the territory?
Thank you, Member, for Karama. NT Health is currently the provider of last resort when it comes to aged care. On any given day, as I said in my opening speech, our hospital beds in Darwin and Alice Springs are taken up by long-stay aged care patients, and I think I've previously quoted, and that might consist of anywhere between around about 60 and 80 aged care patients that are utilising beds in our hospitals on any given day. This means that our hospitals have become the only place to care for older Territorians because there are no beds available in residential aged care facilities. As such, we have the highest aged care occupancy rate of 92.2% and the longest hospital stays for older patients awaiting aged care placement. The NT also has fewer residential aged care beds per capita, with 47.5 beds per 1,000 people over the age of 70 years of age, compared to the national average of 67.5 beds, so a difference of 20 beds per 1,000, I should say. This is causing a bed block. It's causing bed block in our hospitals and significantly more costly than residential aged care. It's estimated that it costs around $40 million each year for the NT Health to provide this care. During the reporting period, $2 million in funding was allocated to design a new residential aged care facility within the Palmerston Regional Hospital precinct. A further $10 million, as I indicated before, has been allocated to fund headworks and the subdivision to support future development. We've reliably estimated that a new residential aged care facility is estimated to require an investment of around $120 million. Leading up to the federal election, the current federal government promised $60 million towards the build cost and is engaging directly with private providers to attract interest in them building and operating a facility here in the top end. So at the moment, submissions to deliver a new residential aged care facility through the Australian Government Aged Care Capital Assistance Grants Program recently closed, and there has been some submissions, and those proposals are being considered right now. Our government continues to work closely with the Commonwealth to progress this development here in the Northern Territory. So this is a big focus of our government, is to ensure that aged care facilities are provided here in the top end. As I said, it's costing our government $40 million a year to accommodate aged care residents. We want to see aged care residents in the appropriate facilities. Families don't want to see aged care people in hospitals. We want to see them in the appropriate facilities where they're being cared for and receive the treatment and support that they need to live a better life.
Thank you. Are there any further questions on output 3.3 aged care?
No.
That concludes consideration of output 3.3 and output group 3. The committee will now consider output group 4, disease prevention and health protection, output 4.1, disease prevention and health protection. Are there any questions?
No.
That concludes consideration of output group 4. The committee will now move on to output group 5, national critical care and trauma response, output 5.1, national critical care and trauma response. Are there any questions?
No.
That concludes the consideration of output group 5. The committee will now proceed to output group 6, corporate and shared services, output 6.1, corporate and governance. Are there any questions?
No.
That concludes the consideration of output 6.1. The committee will now consider output 6.2, shared services received. Are there any questions?
No.
That concludes the consideration of output 6.2 and output group 6. That concludes consideration of all outputs related to the Department of Health. On behalf of the committee, I would like to thank the officers who provided advice to the Minister today. The committee will now move to consider outputs relating to the Department of Housing, Local Government and Community Development. We will pause for 5 minutes and I'll hand over to the Minister for final remarks.
Thank you, Chair. And just in wrapping up, I do want to thank our Chief Executive and our Deputy Chief Executives, Angela Brannelly and also Cecelia Gore, for coming in today. But just a reminder that we do have people on the front line and they're performing excellent work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So thank you to the department for all the work that they've put in preparing for estimates today.
Thank you, Minister, and the committee echoes those sentiments. Thank you. We are now adjourned.